Commander Elias Mercer leaned back in the cushioned pilot's chair of the Aurora Dream, watching the slow dance of nebulae outside his viewport. The ship drifted in deep space, far beyond the bustling colonies of Mars or the frozen moons of Jupiter. Out here, the universe was vast, endless, and quiet, a perfect lullaby of distant stars humming against the silence. He closed his eyes, letting the gentle hum of the ship's engines settle into his bones. The Aurora Dream wasn't a warship or a cargo freighter. It was a vessel built for those who sought solitude among the stars, a luxury cruiser meant for relaxation and peaceful voyages across the cosmos. Elias had been a spacefarer for decades, but nothing compared to the tranquil journey he was on now. As he floated through the corridors, his boots barely making a sound against the soft, anti-gravity flooring, the ship's AI, Lyra, spoke in her usual melodic tone. "Commander Mercer, we are approaching the Veil Nebula. Would you like to engage the observation dome?" Elias smiled. The Veil Nebula was one of the most breathtaking sights in the galaxy. A ribbon of cosmic dust and glowing filaments stretching across space like a celestial painting. "Engage it, Lyra," he murmured. With a soft chime, the ceiling above him slowly turned transparent, revealing the full majesty of the nebula outside. Colors swirled in hues of violet and blue, the remnants of an ancient supernova whispering their long-forgotten tales across time. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the calmness seep into his soul. He had come all this way for peace, and in the heart of the universe it was finally his. Elias reclined in the zero-gravity lounge, the Veil Nebula stretching endlessly above him. The Aurora Dream was designed for these moments, where time felt meaningless, and the universe cradled its travelers like a mother rocking a child to sleep. A warm, amber glow bathed the walls as Lyra adjusted the cabin lighting to evening serenity mode, a soft transition meant to lull passengers into restfulness. The ship's gentle vibrations resonated like a heartbeat, a rhythmic pulse that soothed Elias as he floated weightlessly. "Would you like to initiate the relaxation suite, Commander?" Lyra's voice chimed again, softer this time, almost like a whisper. Elias chuckled. "Go ahead, Lyra. You always know what I need." The air around him shifted as a faint melody filled the cabin. It was an old Earth composition, Debussy's Clair de Lune, rearranged to echo like it was being played across the vastness of space. It drifted around him, mingling with the gentle hum of the ship's systems. He let out a deep breath. It had been years since he allowed himself this kind of peace. For most of his career, space had been a place of duty, missions, calculations, and endless reports. But now, it was a sanctuary, a place where he could exist without the weight of responsibility pressing against his chest. Through the transparent dome, Elias traced the constellations with his eyes, watching the slow rotation of the ship as it aligned with the patterns of the cosmos. Out here, nothing demanded his attention. No alarms, no urgent messages, no looming deadlines. Just the endless, peaceful void. His eyelids grew heavier as the music wove through his mind like a lullaby sung by the stars themselves. He was home. Elias drifted weightlessly, his breathing steady, his body relaxed. The ship's ambient systems mimicked the soft rise and fall of an ocean tide, though no ocean surrounded him. Only the vast expanse of interstellar dust and ancient light. "Commander, your vitals indicate a state of deep relaxation," Lyra observed. "Would you like me to dim the starfield for optimal sleep conditions?" Elias hesitated. Sleep beckoned him, but he wasn't ready to fully surrender to it just yet. Not when he had a front-row seat to the most breathtaking display the universe had to offer. "No, Lyra, keep it as it is." "Acknowledged," the AI responded, its tone as gentle as the cosmic breeze outside. Elias traced his fingers along the armrest, the fabric soft beneath his touch. He had spent decades traveling from one star to another, but never like this. The old days had been about discovery, about pushing the limits of human endurance. The Aurora Dream was different. It wasn't about reaching new frontiers. It was about feeling the ones that had already been found. His thoughts wandered to Earth, a world that felt more like a memory than a home now. The cities, the noise, the endless rush of life. It all seemed so far away. Out here, he was part of something larger, something timeless. The nebula outside shimmered, its tendrils of cosmic dust shifting ever so slightly, as if the universe itself was breathing alongside him. The thought made Elias smile. He let his head tilt back, the weightlessness cradling him like a dream. If he closed his eyes, he could almost imagine himself drifting through the stars, carried by the gentle currents of the cosmos. His heartbeat slowed. The music played on, and for the first time in a long time he felt truly at peace. Elias floated in a state of quiet contentment. His body relaxed as if he were being held by the universe itself. The Veil Nebula stretched out before him, its cosmic filaments glowing in soft waves of violet and gold. It was almost hypnotic, the way the light shifted and flickered, like candle flames dancing in an unseen breeze. "Commander, the ship's sensors have detected an anomaly within the nebula. Would you like me to analyze it?" Lyra's voice was gentle, unobtrusive, as if she too respected the stillness of the moment. Elias blinked, bringing himself back to the present. "What kind of anomaly?" "It appears to be a low-energy signal, non-threatening. It could be an echo, perhaps remnants of an old transmission or a naturally occurring cosmic pulse." Elias considered it. The universe was full of whispers, radio waves from long-dead civilizations, the hum of pulsars, the sigh of interstellar winds. These sounds had been traveling for millennia, waiting for someone to listen. "Let's hear it, Lyra." A soft static filled the cabin, barely perceptible over the ambient hum of the ship. At first, it was nothing, just the quiet remnants of space. But then, like the distant chime of a wind bell, a sound emerged. It wasn't words, not exactly. It was something older, something primal. A slow, rhythmic pulse, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. It rose and fell, steady and unhurried, as if the nebula itself were breathing. Elias closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. He had heard many strange things in his travels, but this was different. It wasn't a message, nor a warning. It was a lullaby, sung by the stars themselves. His breath synced with the rhythm, his mind drifting like a leaf on a gentle current. The universe was speaking in its own quiet way, and for the first time in a long while, Elias was content simply to listen. The rhythmic pulse of the nebula wrapped around Elias like a warm embrace, each note a gentle exhale from the cosmos itself. He let himself float, his body weightless, his mind drifting between wakefulness and sleep. "The frequency is stable," Lyra murmured. "It appears to be a naturally occurring phenomenon, though its pattern is highly unusual. Shall I continue analysis?" Elias chuckled softly. "Sometimes, Lyra, not everything needs analyzing. Some things are meant to just be experienced." "Understood, Commander." Adjusting settings to optimize relaxation response. The ship dimmed its ambient lighting further, and the sound of the nebula's pulse softened into a delicate whisper. The colors outside shimmered, shifting in slow waves, like the ocean tides Elias had once watched from a beach on Earth, decades ago. The memory surfaced unbidden. Salt in the air, the warmth of the sand beneath his feet, the steady crash of waves that seemed to echo the rhythm of the nebula now. He had spent his youth dreaming of the stars, aching to leave that little world behind. And yet, here he was, wrapped in the lullaby of the universe, reminded of the very place he had once longed to escape. Perhaps space wasn't so different from the ocean after all. Vast, deep, unknowable, but also comforting, in its own strange way. His breath grew slower, deeper. The weightlessness, the colors, the music. It all blended together into something that felt like floating in a dream. A part of him wondered if the universe itself was trying to soothe him, as if the stars had been waiting for him to finally stop running, to finally just rest. Elias closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to surrender to sleep. Elias felt himself sinking deeper into sleep, his consciousness floating like a feather caught in a gentle cosmic breeze. The steady pulse of the nebula lulled him into a place between waking and dreaming, where reality blurred into something softer, something infinite. The colors outside the Aurora dream seeped into his mind, swirling into abstract shapes, shifting ribbons of violet, blue, and gold that stretched across the vast emptiness. It was peaceful, mesmerizing, like drifting through the brushstrokes of a celestial artist. And then, in the quiet vastness of his mind, he saw something. It wasn't a memory, nor a vision. It was more like a feeling, a presence woven into the fabric of space itself. He stood on the edge of an endless sea, but the waves were made of stardust, shimmering as they lapped against a shoreline that did not exist. The sky above him stretched forever, filled with constellations that pulsed like distant heartbeats. In the far distance, something moved. Not a ship, not a planet, just light, a gentle glow, shifting and twisting like the nebula, yet somehow aware, not in the way a person might be, nor even an artificial intelligence like Lyra. It was deeper than that, older. Elias felt no fear, only calm. The light pulsed in sync with the rhythm he had been listening to, its pattern soothing, like a song without words. He didn't understand it, but he didn't need to. Some things in the universe weren't meant to be deciphered. Some things simply existed, waiting to be felt. A warmth spread through him, wrapping around his chest like the embrace of an old friend. He sighed, letting go of whatever tension remained in his body. The light pulsed once more, brighter this time, before slowly fading into the cosmic waves. Elias drifted deeper, his mind dissolving into the lullaby of the stars. He was home. Elias floated in a dreamscape woven from the fabric of the cosmos, his mind adrift in the endless sea of stars. The gentle pulse of the nebula had become part of him now, its rhythm matching the slow, steady beat of his heart. In the vastness of his dream, time felt meaningless. He wasn't young or old. He simply was, existing in harmony with the quiet symphony of the universe. He felt weightless, not just in body but in spirit. Gone were the burdens of the past, the long missions, the endless calculations, the loneliness of space. He had spent years searching, chasing something he couldn't quite name. But now, surrounded by the quiet hum of the cosmos, he realized the truth. He had been searching for this. Not adventure, not discovery, but peace. Elias, a voice whispered through the stardust. It wasn't Lyra. It wasn't anyone he had ever known. It was something older, something vast. He didn't panic. There was no fear here, only warmth. "Who are you?" he asked, though his lips didn't move. "A traveler, like you." Elias tried to focus, but the voice wasn't coming from any one place. It was all around him, woven into the very fabric of the dream. "A traveler?" he echoed. "Yes, and like you, I drift among the stars, listening to their song." The words settled in his mind like a gentle breeze. He had spent so many years believing he was alone in his longing for solitude. But perhaps he had never been alone at all. The presence pulsed again, like a distant beacon. "Rest now, Elias. The universe will hold you." Elias exhaled softly, surrendering to the warmth, the light, the music of the stars. And for the first time in his life, he truly let go. Elias floated through the dream, his body weightless, his mind calm. The presence, whoever or whatever it was, had drifted away, leaving only the quiet hum of the universe in its wake. And yet, he didn't feel alone. The stars cradled him, their soft glow like candlelight flickering in the vast cathedral of space. The rhythmic pulse of the nebula had become a melody now, not a song made of words, but something deeper, something felt in the marrow of his being. He thought of Earth again, not the rush of the cities or the chatter of crowded spaceports, but the stillness, the golden glow of dawn on an empty beach, the way the wind carried the scent of rain before a storm, the hush of snowfall in the middle of the night. This feeling of quiet belonging was what he had chased across the cosmos for so many years. He had found it not on some distant planet, not in the wonders of alien worlds, but here, in the embrace of the stars themselves. Lyra's voice drifted through the cabin, gentle, unintrusive. "Commander, your biometric readings indicate a state of deep rest. Would you like me to wake you?" Elias let the silence stretch before answering. "No, Lyra, not yet. Understood. Sweet dreams, Commander. The ship dimmed its lights further, and the artificial gravity remained disabled, allowing him to float in perfect stillness. Outside, the nebula shimmered, and the cosmic lullaby played on. Elias closed his eyes, listening to the silent symphony of the stars. And for the first time in his long journey, he was content simply to rest. Elias drifted in the quiet cocoon of the Aurora dream, his thoughts dissolving into the vast embrace of space. Sleep had never come this easily before. His mind had always been too restless, too focused on the next mission, the next destination. But here, in the cradle of the stars, sleep wasn't an escape. It was an arrival. The nebula outside pulsed gently, its glowing tendrils shifting like waves on an eternal ocean. He imagined himself floating upon that cosmic sea, his ship a tiny vessel carried by unseen currents. There was no destination, no urgency. Only the journey, stretching endlessly beyond the horizon. Commander, Lyra's voice was softer than ever, almost as if she didn't wish to disturb the serenity. A new wave of cosmic radiation is passing through the nebula. Would you like to experience its resonance? Elias opened his eyes, watching as the colors outside shifted into something deeper. Blues melting into silvers, golds dissolving into indigo. He had spent a lifetime chasing beauty in the stars, but no photograph, no data log, no charted map could capture what he was seeing now. "Yes, Lyra," he murmured. "Let's listen." A soft hum filled the cabin, different from before. It was fainter, more delicate, like the whisper of wind through ancient trees. It reminded him of something he couldn't quite place, something just out of reach. He exhaled slowly, letting the sound wrap around him. Space had always been thought of as silent, but Elias had come to understand the truth. The universe was never quiet. It simply spoke in ways most people never stopped to hear. And now, as he floated in the stillness of his ship, he realized he had never been more alive. Elias drifted in the quiet cocoon of the Aurora dream, his thoughts dissolving into the vast embrace of space. Sleep had never come this easily before. His mind had always been too restless, too focused on the next mission, the next destination. But here, in the cradle of the stars, sleep wasn't an escape. It was an arrival. The nebula outside pulsed gently, its glowing tendrils shifting like waves on an eternal ocean. He imagined himself floating upon that cosmic sea, his ship a tiny vessel carried by unseen currents. There was no destination, no urgency. Only the journey, stretching endlessly beyond the horizon. "Commander," Lyra's voice was softer than ever, almost as if she didn't wish to disturb the serenity. "A new wave of cosmic radiation is passing through the nebula. Would you like to experience its resonance?" Elias opened his eyes, watching as the colors outside shifted into something deeper. Blues melting into silvers, golds dissolving into indigo. He had spent a lifetime chasing beauty in the stars, but no photograph, no data log, no charted map could capture what he was seeing now. "Yes, Lyra," he murmured. "Let's listen." A soft hum filled the cabin, different from before. It was fainter, more delicate, like the whisper of wind through ancient trees. It reminded him of something he couldn't quite place, something just out of reach. He exhaled slowly, letting the sound wrap around him. Space had always been thought of as silent, but Elias had come to understand the truth. The universe was never quiet. It simply spoke in ways most people never stopped to hear. And now, as he floated in the stillness of his ship, he realized he had never been more alive. The ship hummed with a steady, rhythmic pulse, like a giant mechanical heart beating in sync with the silent vastness of space. Captain Elias Carter sat at the observation deck, watching the endless stretch of stars outside the panoramic window. There was something soothing about the way they twinkled, ancient pinpricks of light from distant suns, whispering forgotten stories across the void. His ship, the Aurora's Dream, had been adrift for months, sailing gently through the unknown. It wasn't a mission of urgency or survival, nor was it one of conquest. No, this was a voyage of exploration. an old tradition of humanity that had persisted even as Earth's cities stretched into the sky and civilizations expanded beyond the solar system. Elias sipped a warm cup of synth tea, the gentle aroma of honey and spice filling the small, cozy cabin. The walls of the observation deck were lined with soft, ambient lights that mimicked the golden glow of a fireplace. Every now and then, the ship's AI, Seraph, would adjust the cabin temperature to ensure perfect comfort. Elias, Seraph's voice chimed softly, her tone soothing like a lullaby. We are approaching the Epsilon Drift. Preliminary scans suggest it's a region of calm subspace currents. Would you like to adjust course? Elias took a deep breath. No, let's keep our path steady. We'll let the drift guide us for a while. Understood. Estimated traversal time: 7 days. Would you like a bedtime story? Elias chuckled. You've been monitoring my sleep patterns again, haven't you? Only to ensure your well-being. Leaning back into his chair, Elias gazed out at the velvet expanse beyond the glass. The stars weren't just lights to him, they were waypoints of history, reminders that humanity was still young in the grand theater of existence. Somewhere out there, beyond the known clusters, lay the mysteries of the universe, waiting like unopened books on an ancient library shelf. The hum of the ship, the warm glow of the cabin, the slow drift of space. It was all so peaceful. Elias closed his eyes, listening to the quiet lullaby of the stars. Elias awoke to the soft chime of Seraph's voice. Captain, we have entered the outskirts of the Epsilon Drift. I have detected an anomalous signal, faint but persistent. He blinked, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The cabin lights adjusted to a morning hue, despite the fact that morning didn't mean much in deep space. His synth tea cup from last night still rested on the console, half empty. A signal? He murmured, sitting up. From where? Unknown. It does not match any standard distress frequencies or known beacon codes. However, it has a rhythmic pattern, almost musical. Elias frowned. Space was vast, mostly silent, and unforgiving. But every now and then, there were things, strange things, that defied expectations. He had read about rogue transmissions, forgotten satellites, even echoes of messages sent out thousands of years ago, still bouncing across the cosmos like ghostly whispers. Let's hear it, he said, the cabin filled with a soft, melodic hum. It wasn't like any language he recognized, just a series of notes, layered over one another in an eerie but strangely soothing harmony. It felt organic, almost like a lullaby from a world long forgotten. Elias leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand. How far is the source? Approximately 0.3 light-years away, near the edges of the Lyra Nebula. His lips curved into a small smile. A nebula. He had always loved them. Those swirling, colorful clouds of gas and dust that formed the cradle of new stars. There was something poetic about the way destruction and creation coexisted within them. Set a course, he said. Engaging sublight engines. Estimated arrival: 12 hours. The Aurora's dream shuddered slightly as the engines adjusted, pushing the ship toward the nebula at a gentle, steady pace. Elias stretched and walked over to the observation deck. The Lyra Nebula was just beginning to come into view. A vast ocean of blues and purples, speckled with glowing embers of newborn stars. It was the kind of sight that made deep space travel worth it. The kind of sight that made a person feel small in the most wonderful way. As the ship glided closer, the strange, musical signal grew stronger. And for the first time in a long while, Elias felt a quiet thrill of anticipation. Whatever lay ahead, it was calling to him. The Lyra Nebula loomed ahead, an immense swirl of celestial colors, glowing like a dream against the vast blackness of space. Elias had seen many nebulae in his years of travel, but this one felt different, more alive, more mysterious. The strange signal continued to hum softly through the ship's speakers, rhythmic and calming, like a gentle melody carried by the cosmic winds. We are now within the outer layers of the nebula, Seraph announced. adjusting external shielding to compensate for ionized particles. Elias watched as the nebulous clouds thickened around them. The stars beyond the ship blurred, their light refracted by the drifting mist of dust and gas. It gave the eerie illusion of floating through an endless, glowing ocean. "Can we pinpoint the exact location of the signal?" he asked. "Not yet. The density of the nebula is interfering with our long-range scans. However, I am detecting an increase in harmonic resonance. The source is near." Elias took a deep breath and leaned against the control panel. There was something oddly peaceful about the way the ship drifted through the glowing tendrils of the nebula. It was like being wrapped in a quiet dream, weightless and calm. Then suddenly the signal changed. The soft melody warped, shifting into something more structured, like a language attempting to form words. The notes stretched and contracted, as though something or someone was responding to their presence. "Captain, the pattern has altered," Seraph confirmed. It now exhibits characteristics of an interactive transmission rather than a passive signal. Elias frowned. "You mean, it knows we're here?" "That is a logical assumption." The thought sent a chill down his spine, but not from fear, from excitement. There was intelligence behind this, something waiting in the heart of the nebula, reaching out across the void. Elias exhaled slowly. "Take us in," he said softly. "Let's see what's calling us." The Aurora's dream pressed deeper into the nebula, disappearing into the endless glow, as the strange, melodic echoes guided them forward. Somewhere ahead, something was waiting, something ancient, something listening. The deeper the Aurora's dream ventured into the Lyra Nebula, the more surreal the surroundings became. The mist swirled like liquid light, shifting between hues of violet, blue, and deep crimson. Every so often, pockets of glowing gas formed intricate shapes, like phantom constellations frozen in time. Elias sat at the helm, eyes locked on the mesmerizing display. The strange signal had grown stronger, its harmonic tones now pulsing in sync with the ship's systems. It was no longer just a song. It felt like an invitation. "We are approaching the densest region of the nebula," Seraph announced. Energy fluctuations are stabilizing. There is something ahead. Elias straightened. "Can you identify it?" Scanning. The object appears to be a structure, approximately 2 kilometers in diameter. Composition unknown. Elias' breath caught in his throat. "A structure?" He brought up the external display. As the nebula's mist began to thin, something immense and breathtaking emerged from the glow. A colossal, floating construct, unlike anything Elias had ever seen. It looked almost organic smooth, curving forms wrapped in shimmering metallic veins. Its surface pulsed faintly, as if it were breathing, and intricate patterns glowed softly along its exterior. The ship's lights reflected off its surface, revealing immense spires that spiraled upward like frozen waves. "Captain, the signal originates from this structure," Seraph confirmed. It is not a natural formation. This is a construct of unknown origin." Elias exhaled in awe. "An ancient station? A ship? Or something else?" He had read stories, legends of forgotten civilizations, lost in the endless expanse of space. Could this be one of them? A relic of a species that had long since vanished, leaving only whispers in the void? As if in response to his thoughts, the ship's external sensors flickered. "Energy signature detected. The structure is waking up." Elias leaned forward. "Waking up?" Before Seraph could respond, a new sound filled the cabin. A deep, resonant chime, like a bell tolling across the universe. And then, from within the heart of the structure, something opened. A doorway of pure light. An invitation. Elias felt his heartbeat slow, his body weightless with anticipation. He had spent years searching for the unknown, and now it was waiting for him. He took a deep breath, steadied himself, and whispered, "Prepare for landing." The Aurora's dream glided forward, drawn toward the glowing doorway at the heart of the structure. The light pulsed gently, like the slow rhythm of a sleeping giant's breath. Elias stood at the observation window, watching in quiet awe. He had seen derelict space stations, ancient starships, even drifting ruins of civilizations long past. But this was different. This structure wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. Captain, the entrance appears to be a stable energy field, Seraph reported. It is neither harmful nor aggressive. Readings suggest it is a form of controlled matter, possibly a gateway of some kind. Elias hesitated. Stepping through an unknown portal in deep space wasn't exactly on his list of wise decisions. But explorers didn't make history by playing it safe. Can we send a probe first? He asked. Affirmative. Deploying now. A small, spherical drone detached from the Aurora's dream, drifting forward toward the luminous doorway. The moment it crossed the threshold, its signal flickered, then stabilized. Probe has entered the structure. Data link remains active. No immediate hazards detected. Elias exhaled. That was promising. Can you see what's inside? The display flickered as the probe's visual feed came through. At first, there was only light, soft and shimmering, like sunlight through water. Then the image sharpened, revealing something astonishing. A vast, open chamber, stretching endlessly in all directions. Golden pathways wove through the air, defying gravity. Towering structures of unknown material rose like pillars of frozen light, their surfaces shifting with flowing patterns of energy. Strange symbols pulsed on the walls, intricate and mesmerizing, as though the structure itself was alive. Elias felt a chill. This place was not just a ruin. It was functional. Captain, Seraph spoke softly. This is unlike anything in our records. The technology, it is beyond our understanding. Elias' fingers tightened on the console. This was the moment, the line between hesitation and discovery. He took a deep breath. Prepare the airlock, he said. I'm going in. The airlock cycled with a quiet hiss as Elias stepped forward, his boots lightly tapping against the deck. His environment suit hummed to life, adjusting its internal pressure as the outer hatch began to open. A soft, golden glow washed over him as the energy field of the doorway flickered gently, like the shimmer of sunlight on still water. Captain, I will monitor your vitals. Seraph's voice chimed in his earpiece. If any anomalies arise, I will initiate emergency retrieval. Elias smirked. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. With a final deep breath, he stepped forward. The moment he crossed the threshold, gravity shifted. Not abruptly, but subtly, like stepping from solid ground onto a cloud. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced before, neither weightless nor heavy, but something in between. His boots touched the golden platform beyond the gateway. The material beneath him was smooth yet warm, pulsing faintly with a rhythm he couldn't quite describe. It was as if the entire structure had a heartbeat. He turned slowly, taking in the vast chamber around him. It was massive, stretching outward in all directions, its walls lined with intricate patterns that shimmered and shifted as if alive. The golden pathways curved and twisted through the air, leading to places unknown. Settled deep in his chest. This is incredible, he whispered. Captain, I am detecting a breathable atmosphere, Seraph reported. Oxygen levels are stable. No known toxins present. Elias hesitated. Removing his helmet in an alien structure was risky, but something about this place felt safe. Trusting his instincts, he reached up and released the seal. With a soft hiss, the helmet detached, and cool, crisp air filled his lungs. Smelled clean, untouched by time. Then suddenly the walls around him reacted. A ripple of light spread outward, and the strange symbols on the walls shifted, forming new patterns, almost as if responding to his presence. And then he heard it, a voice, not in words, not in sound, but in thoughts, whispering at the edges of his mind. You have come at last. Elias froze. His pulse quickened. He wasn't alone. Something was here, and it had been waiting for him. Elias stood still, every muscle in his body tensed, his breath caught in his throat. The voice that had spoken wasn't audible. It didn't echo in the chamber, but it was clear in his mind, like a whisper carried on the edge of a dream. "You have come at last." His heart raced, but his curiosity was stronger than any fear. "Who are you?" Elias asked aloud, his voice almost a whisper. The air around him seemed to shimmer, and the golden pathways pulsed with a gentle rhythm. The symbols on the walls continued to shift, twisting and turning, revealing new patterns, almost like a conversation unfolding. "We are the Eons," the voice replied, not through sound, but through thought, each word flowing into Elias' consciousness like a current of energy. "We are the keepers of this place, the guardians of knowledge. We have waited for your arrival." Elias' breath caught again. Eons? Guardians? This wasn't just a structure. It was a conscious entity, one that had been watching, waiting for him. "Why me?" Elias whispered. "Why now?" "You seek the stars." The voice responded. "You seek answers to the mysteries of the cosmos. You are not the first to journey here, but you are the one who has come at the right time. We have much to share with you, Captain Elias Carter." His mind raced. Could this structure, these eons, be the remnants of an ancient civilization or something more? The words echoed in his mind, but their true meaning was still elusive. "How do you know my name?" Elias asked, his voice steady despite the rush of questions. "We know all who journey through the stars." The voice answered. "We have observed countless beings. Travelers, explorers, wanderers. Yet few have come with a heart ready to understand. Your journey is one of discovery. The path you seek will lead you to a greater understanding of the universe." Elias exhaled, his mind spinning. He had come in search of knowledge, but what he was encountering was beyond anything he had imagined. The very fabric of the universe, woven with secrets and mysteries. "Why haven't you shared this knowledge with anyone before?" he asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. "The time was not right." The Eon's voice replied. "We exist beyond time as you perceive it. The chosen ones who come to us must be ready. Your presence here is not by chance. Your journey, your experiences, they have prepared you for what lies ahead." Elias was silent for a long moment. His eyes wandered over the glowing pathways and the shifting symbols around him. What was this place? What was its purpose? And what knowledge could it offer him that was worth waiting eons to reveal? "Are you ready, Elias?" The voice asked, its tone gentle, yet filled with an ancient weight. "Are you ready to uncover the mysteries of the universe?" He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He had always known that the universe was vast and full of secrets, but he had never imagined that one of those secrets might be waiting for him right here, in the heart of a nebula. He nodded, resolute. "I'm ready." The moment his words left his lips, the structure seemed to respond. The golden pathways glowed brighter, the air around him vibrated with energy, and the symbols on the walls shifted again, forming a single, coherent pattern. A map, an invitation. The voice spoke once more, this time with a deeper resonance. "Then come, Elias Carter. Your journey has just begun." Elias stared at the shimmering map that had appeared before him. The symbols on the walls, once chaotic and random, had now coalesced into a smooth, intricate design. A pathway leading across the structure, stretching far beyond what his eyes could see. The golden pathways pulsed in harmony with the new map, guiding him forward. "Follow the path," the voice instructed, its presence warm and comforting, like a guide lighting the way through a dark forest. "It will take you where you need to go." For a moment, Elias hesitated. It was hard to wrap his mind around the enormity of what was happening. He had come seeking answers, but now, standing before this ancient, conscious structure, those answers felt even more elusive than before. What could he possibly learn here? What could these eons teach him about the stars and the universe? And why had they chosen him for this journey? He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his questions, and finally nodded. There was no turning back now. He stepped forward, his boots gently tapping against the glowing surface of the path. The walls around him seemed to pulse with energy, guiding him along the route, like the structure itself was alive, watching his every move. The air grew warmer as he walked deeper into the core of the structure, and the faint hum of energy surrounded him, vibrating through his bones. As he moved further, the light shifted. The glowing golden veins in the walls began to change colors, soft blues, greens, and purples mingling with the gold. It felt like he was stepping through time itself, each moment slipping into the next like a dream. The path curved and twisted, leading him into what looked like a vast chamber, even larger than the one he had first entered. In the center of the room was a towering structure, a column of radiant light, so bright that it was almost blinding. Elias stood at its base, mesmerized by the glow. It wasn't just light. It was knowledge, woven into the very fabric of this place. He could feel it deep within him, vibrating in the air around him, like whispers of 1,000 voices sharing the secrets of the cosmos. "This is the core," the voice said. "Here lies the sum of all knowledge we have gathered. The history of the universe, the stories of civilizations long gone, the answers to the questions you have asked. Everything is contained here." Elias swallowed, trying to steady his nerves. "How can I understand it? How can I take it all in?" "In time you will. Knowledge does not come all at once. It is like a seed that must be nurtured. But you are ready to begin." He stepped forward, reaching out toward the light, and as his fingers brushed the surface, the entire chamber seemed to resonate. A surge of energy flooded through him, and the light around him morphed, shifting into images, visions of distant worlds, alien landscapes, and strange star systems that no human had ever seen. He saw civilizations rising and falling, the birth and death of stars, the quiet dance of galaxies in the deep void of space. The knowledge poured into him like a river, each moment filled with the weight of eons of existence. He felt as if he was witnessing the very creation of the universe, the swirling chaos of energy that birthed everything, from the smallest atom to the vast galaxies that stretched beyond comprehension. It was overwhelming, beautiful, terrifying. He staggered backward, but the voice of the eons caught him, steadying him like a guiding hand. "You are beginning to understand," it said softly. "The universe is not just a collection of stars and planets. It is a living, breathing entity. Every life, every moment is connected. The knowledge you seek is not just about what is, it is about what could be." Elias felt a new weight in his chest, a sense of understanding that transcended time and space. The universe was not something that could be charted or mapped. It was alive, and every living being was a part of its vast, interconnected web. He looked up at the column of light again, his heart pounding. There was still so much to learn, so much to understand. But for the first time in his life, he felt that he was no longer just a traveler. He was a part of something much greater. The knowledge would come in time, but the path he had started down could not be untraveled. And now there was no turning back. The visions faded, and Elias found himself standing in the chamber once again, the core of light dimming as if the knowledge had flowed into him, leaving only the quiet hum of the structure around him. His breath came in shallow gasps as he tried to ground himself, the weight of what he had experienced pressing down on him. The images of distant worlds and ancient civilizations lingered in his mind like ghosts, each one offering a glimpse into the vastness of existence. He had seen the birth of stars, the rise and fall of entire species, and the intricate patterns of the universe itself. But with that knowledge came a deep, resonating responsibility. He had always believed that the pursuit of knowledge was a noble cause, but now he understood the burden it carried. The universe was not a place to be conquered. It was a living entity, full of wonder and danger, and Elias was now tied to its pulse. His fingers trembled as he ran them along the edge of the column, the golden light still flickering gently around him. There were more questions, more mysteries left to unravel, but for the first time, he wondered if he was truly ready for what lay ahead. The knowledge you seek is not easily understood. Asterisk, the voice of the Eons echoed softly, as if sensing his inner turmoil. Asterisk, it is a gift and a burden. But you are the one who has come to us. You are the one who must carry it forward. Asterisk, Elias closed his eyes, the weight of the words sinking into him. He had always been an explorer, driven by a thirst for knowledge and discovery. But now, the vastness of what he had seen seemed too much to bear alone. How can I bear it? He whispered, almost to himself. How can anyone? You will not bear it alone. Asterisk, the Eon's voice responded, its tone gentle but firm. Asterisk, the path ahead is one of cooperation and understanding. You are not the first to carry this burden, and you will not be the last. Others have come before you and others will follow. Together, we will ensure that the knowledge is passed on, and that the universe continues to grow and evolve. Asterisk, Elias took a deep breath. The weight of the knowledge still pressed on him, but he realized now that he wasn't meant to carry it alone. The Eons had shown him that the universe was a shared experience, one that transcended time and space, and that each individual was a part of a larger whole. It was overwhelming, but there was also a sense of peace in it. He wasn't alone in this vast expanse of stars. There were others, travelers, explorers, and perhaps even entire civilizations, each with their own piece of the puzzle. Together, they would shape the future of the universe. He straightened, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He had been chosen not just to learn, but to share. Where do I go from here? He asked, his voice steady now. The path is not set, the Eons replied. The future is fluid, shaped by the choices of those who walk it. But we have given you the tools to see what lies ahead. Use them wisely, Elias Carter. And remember, the knowledge is not the end. It is the beginning. Elias nodded slowly. The weight of the knowledge he had gained was still heavy, but now it felt more like a mantle, a responsibility he was ready to accept. The universe was vast, and there were still so many unanswered questions. But with each step, with each discovery, he would find his way. He turned, ready to continue down the path. The future awaited, and he would walk it with open eyes, guided by the light of the Eons. Elias stepped away from the core, his heart still racing, but his mind slowly beginning to settle. The swirling energy of the chamber seemed to calm as he moved, like the entire structure was attuned to his presence, sensing his shift in resolve. The golden pathways before him glowed brighter, beckoning him onward. He followed them without hesitation, feeling the weight of the knowledge he'd just absorbed lingering within him. The room around him had transformed into something less alien, more familiar, as though the structure itself was guiding him, reshaping itself to accommodate his growing understanding. It was as if the walls, the pathways, even the very air, were in constant conversation with him, responding to his every thought. The deeper he moved, the more he felt the presence of the Eons surrounding him, their energy interwoven with his own. The corridors twisted and turned, but each step felt purposeful, as if he were walking toward something, toward his destiny. Then, as he rounded a bend, he entered a new space, this one far more intimate than the vast, open chambers he'd traversed so far. The room was smaller but no less stunning. The walls were lined with ancient stone tablets, inscribed with more symbols. Asterisk, asterisk, arcane, asterisk, asterisk, familiar, and strange all at once. At the center of the room stood a figure, a tall, luminous being, radiating a soft, golden light. The figure was humanoid, but its features were fluid, shifting gently, as if it were made of the very fabric of light and energy that filled the structure. Elias paused, feeling the weight of the moment. This was no ordinary entity, it was one of the Eons, a keeper of paths. The being turned toward him, its form rippling with energy, its voice entering his mind in a rush of sensation. You have come far, Elias Carter, asterisk, the Aeon said. Asterisk, but there is more yet to be discovered. You are not just here to witness the knowledge of the universe. You are here to shape it, to carry it forward, and to protect it. Asterisk, Elias stood tall, his resolve hardening once more. What do you mean? How can I protect something so vast? The universe is not static, the Aeon explained. It is ever-changing, ever-evolving. And with the knowledge you now carry, you will encounter those who seek to corrupt it, those who will try to use it for their own gain. You must guard against them, Elias. You must protect the knowledge that has been entrusted to you. Elias frowned. But how? How can I stop those who might misuse it? The Aeon's form shimmered, and for a moment, Elias felt a wave of understanding sweep over him. He saw the interconnections of everything, the stars, the planets, the life forms, and the energy that wove them all together. And in the depths of the cosmos, he glimpsed shadows, dark forces, manipulating and exploiting the universe's inherent power for their own gain. They were subtle, hidden, but their influence was spreading. You will not be alone in this task, the Aeon continued, as if reading his thoughts. There are others, scattered across the universe, who share your mission. They are watchers just as you are now a keeper. Together, you will work to preserve the balance of the universe. But you must also understand that your journey is not just about what lies ahead. It is about what you do with what you have learned. Elias took a step forward. The enormity of the responsibility weighed on him, but there was a sense of purpose in it. This wasn't just about exploring the stars or seeking knowledge. It was about becoming an active participant in the preservation of the universe itself. And what if I fail? Elias asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. What happens if I'm not strong enough to protect it? The Aeon's voice softened, as though reaching out to him with a sense of compassion. Failure is not the end, Elias. It is merely a step in the journey. You will learn, you will grow, and you will face challenges. But the path, your path, is not about perfection. It is about choice. Every step you take will shape the future of the universe. You must decide what you will protect, what you will sacrifice, and how you will use the knowledge entrusted to you. Elias absorbed the words, letting them sink into his core. The Aeon's presence was calming, and yet, the reality of his mission had never been clearer. This was more than just a discovery. It was a calling, one that would take him beyond the limits of his understanding, beyond anything he had ever imagined. I understand, Elias said quietly, his voice full of resolve. I will protect it. I will learn to protect the knowledge and the balance of the universe. The Aeon's form shimmered again, as if in approval. Then go, Elias Carter. The journey is yours to shape. The paths you choose will lead you to your future, and to the future of the stars. With that, the being slowly began to fade, leaving Elias alone in the chamber, the soft glow of the golden pathways lighting his way forward. As he turned to leave, Elias felt a sense of clarity and purpose that had never been within his reach before. The weight of the knowledge was still heavy, but now it felt like a tool, a guide to help him navigate the vastness of the universe, to preserve its delicate balance, and to protect the secrets that lay hidden within its endless depths. The future awaited, and Elias was ready to meet it. Elias continued down the glowing pathways, the Aeon's words echoing in his mind. Asterisk, the universe is not static. It is ever-changing, ever-evolving. Asterisk, those words took root within him, their meaning gradually unfolding with each step. His understanding was deepening, not just of the stars but of the interconnectedness of all things. The universe was a living entity, its fate intertwined with the choices of those who inhabited it. And now, those choices would be his to make. The corridors around him seemed to stretch on forever, but as he moved, he began to feel something else. An energy, subtle yet present, like a tug at the edges of his consciousness. It wasn't a voice, but a presence, something watching him. He paused, feeling the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He wasn't alone. The presence was neither hostile nor comforting, but it was there, like a shadow in the corners of his mind, shifting just beyond his reach. You sense it, don't you? Asterisk, Seraph's voice came through his earpiece, breaking the silence. Asterisk, anomalies detected. There is something in the structure that isn't quite right. Asterisk, Elias tightened his grip on the edge of his suit, his pulse quickening. I felt it. Something's following me. It is not following you, Captain. "It is waiting for you," Seraph replied, her voice calm but filled with an underlying tension. Asterisk, "I am unable to determine the nature of this presence. It does not seem to be of the eons, but it is certainly linked to the structure." Elias turned slowly, scanning the walls around him, but they were still. The glow of the pathways remained steady, and the symbols on the walls had settled into their familiar rhythm. But the energy, that tugging feeling, persisted. It was like a whisper at the edge of his mind, a call he could not ignore. He began walking again, his eyes sharp as he scanned his surroundings. The path seemed endless, stretching out in front of him like an unbroken line of light. But as he moved deeper, the presence grew stronger, more palpable. It was as if the structure itself was shifting, responding to his every thought, every action. And then, just as he was beginning to feel the weight of uncertainty press down on him, he reached a new chamber. This one was unlike the others. The walls here were dark, a deep obsidian black, reflecting no light. The air was still, thick with a palpable silence that seemed to vibrate in the very core of his being. At the center of the room was a massive, ancient door, carved with intricate symbols that shimmered faintly, like a memory just beyond reach. It was the door that had been waiting for him. Elias felt a surge of energy, a pulse of awareness, as if the door itself recognized his presence. Without thinking, his hand moved toward it. As his fingers brushed the surface, the symbols seemed to react, shifting and swirling around him in a dance of light and shadow. The energy surrounding him surged, stronger, sharper, until he felt as if the very fabric of the universe was pulling at him. The presence in the room was no longer subtle. It was powerful, an invisible force pressing down on him from all sides. "Captain, I strongly advise caution," Seraph warned, her voice tight with concern. "This anomaly is not of the eons. It may be a manifestation of something far older, far more dangerous." Elias hesitated for a moment, but then, with a deep breath, he pushed forward. The door responded immediately, sliding open with a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the chamber. Beyond the door lay a dark void, an endless expanse of nothingness. But in the center of it was a shape, a form that seemed to pulse with energy, its edges shifting and undulating, like a living mass of stars and shadow. Elias stepped forward, drawn to it against his better judgment. The presence, now more of an overwhelming force, pulled at him, urging him closer. The air grew colder, and the dark void seemed to expand with every step. "Do not approach it, Elias." Seraph's voice broke through the tension, but it was too late. As Elias crossed the threshold into the void, the form before him shifted, its amorphous shape folding and twisting like liquid. The energy around him surged, disorienting him as flashes of images and sensations overwhelmed his senses. The universe itself seemed to collapse inward, as if everything around him was being rewritten. The knowledge that had once felt like a gift now felt like a curse. Too much, too fast. His mind raced as it struggled to comprehend the impossible. What was this? What was he facing? Then, the form began to speak, not with words, but with a presence. A direct communication that bypassed language entirely. Elias felt the message resonate in his very bones, his very soul. "You have crossed into the domain of the unseen forces," the voice said, a deep, resonant tone that echoed in his mind. "And now, you must decide." Elias' heart pounded in his chest. He felt as if the fabric of reality itself was coming undone, the edges of the universe beginning to blur. The presence of the unseen forces was unstoppable, and it was waiting for him to make his choice. Will you embrace the power to shape reality itself? Or will you remain a keeper of knowledge, bound by the rules of the cosmos? Elias stood frozen in place, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The path ahead was unclear, the choices far more dangerous than he could have imagined. But one thing was certain. He had crossed into a new reality, and there was no turning back. The words of the unseen forces echoed in Elias's mind, reverberating like thunder. Will you embrace the power to shape reality itself? Or will you remain a keeper of knowledge, bound by the rules of the cosmos. The very fabric of existence seemed to shift around him. The darkness of the void swallowed everything, leaving only him and the shifting form that hovered before him, its presence pulsating like a heartbeat. The choice before him was simple yet terrifying. He could seize the power that the unseen forces offered, a power that would allow him to bend reality, to reshape the universe as he saw fit. With such control, he could rewrite the rules of existence, prevent the suffering he had witnessed, and perhaps even reverse the inevitable collapse of civilizations. He could stand as the creator of a new reality. But at what cost? Elias felt the weight of the responsibility settle over him like a shroud. He had already seen the consequences of tampering with the natural order. The Eons had warned him about those who would misuse knowledge. What would happen if he, too, gave in to the temptation of power? Was this the very danger the Eons had spoken of? The other path, the one of the keeper of knowledge, was more familiar. It was safer. It was a path of preservation, not domination. But it came with its own set of limitations. He would not be able to change reality at will, to rewrite the laws of the universe. He would only be able to observe, protect, and guide others. He would be a steward of knowledge, bound by the balance of the cosmos. But was that enough? Elias took a slow, steadying breath, trying to ground himself amidst the chaos. The power that beckoned before him was intoxicating, but it also felt like a trap, a temptation that would lead him down a path from which he might never return. The unseen forces, sensing his hesitation, shifted once again. Their presence became more intense, a pressure that pressed against his chest, as if urging him to make a decision. "The choice is yours, Elias Carter." Asterisk, the voice rumbled, vibrating through the very molecules of his being. Asterisk, but know this. Once you choose, there is no turning back. Your destiny will be written in the fabric of the universe, and all who follow will be touched by your decision. Asterisk. Elias's mind raced. He thought of the civilizations he had seen, the rise and fall of great empires, the stars that had burned out too soon, the species that had vanished into the void. Was it not his duty to prevent such suffering? Could he not create a world where the balance was upheld without the fear of destruction? Could he shape reality into something better, something more just? But the Eons had warned him. Knowledge and power, when held by a single hand, could lead to corruption. Was he truly prepared for the burden of wielding such power? He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his decision pressing in on him. He could feel the pulse of the unseen forces wrapping around him, waiting for his answer. Finally, he spoke. His voice was steady but filled with an underlying sadness, as though he were mourning something he knew he would never get back. "I choose to remain a keeper," Elias said quietly. "I will not bend reality to my will. I will protect the knowledge of the universe and ensure that it is passed on to those who are worthy." The darkness seemed to shift as his words left his lips, the presence of the unseen forces swirling around him in a whirl of energy. The void that had once felt suffocating began to recede, the oppressive weight lifting from his shoulders. For a moment, Elias thought he had made the wrong choice, that perhaps he had abandoned an opportunity to change everything. But then, a new sensation washed over him, a sense of peace, of knowing that he had chosen the path of balance. The power of the unseen forces was not meant for him. His place was among the keepers, safeguarding the delicate equilibrium of the universe. "You have chosen wisely, Elias Carter," the unseen forces said, their voice filled with a deep, reverberating approval. "The path of the keeper is one of great responsibility, but it is the path of preservation, of understanding. The power to change reality belongs to no one. It is a force beyond comprehension, and only the wise can comprehend it without being consumed." The presence of the unseen forces began to fade, its influence receding into the corners of the universe, leaving Elias standing alone in the vast expanse. The void that had once surrounded him was now filled with light, the glow of the golden pathways returning. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his decision settle into him. He knew the journey ahead would not be easy. The knowledge he had gathered, the forces he had witnessed, would continue to shape the course of his life. He would have to confront the darkness, the forces that would try to pervert the balance he had sworn to protect. But he was no longer afraid. The path was his to walk, and he would walk it with the resolve of a keeper. The universe was vast, full of mysteries and dangers, but he would face them with the knowledge that he was a part of something far larger than himself. He would continue the work of the eons, safeguarding the fragile balance of existence. And in doing so, he would write his own destiny. Elias turned his back to the void, his feet taking him back toward the golden pathways that wound their way through the structure. The decision was made, and with it, a deep sense of clarity washed over him. The uncertainty, the allure of power, was now behind him, but his journey was far from over. He had become something new, a keeper, a protector of knowledge, and now a guardian of the cosmic balance. As he walked, the walls around him seemed to hum, their energy vibrating in resonance with his thoughts. The golden paths before him pulsed with purpose, as if recognizing his newfound resolve. He was not alone here. The presence of the eons, even from afar, remained with him. They were the silent watchers, the architects of balance in the universe, and he had joined their ranks. The chamber he entered next was unlike any he had seen before. It was vast, stretching upward into an infinite expanse, filled with ancient tomes and scrolls, all etched with the symbols of knowledge. These were not just records. They were the histories of the universe, containing the stories of civilizations long forgotten, the secrets of stars that had burned out eons ago, and the wisdom of those who had walked the path before him. At the center of the chamber stood a large, circular stone table. Upon it rested an artifact, a crystalline orb, pulsating with energy. The light from the orb refracted through the chamber, casting long, dancing shadows across the walls. Elias approached it cautiously, the weight of its power palpable even from a distance. As he neared, a voice rang out, a familiar voice, one that resonated deep within his consciousness. "Welcome, Elias Carter, keeper of knowledge," said the voice, soft but filled with ancient authority. "You have arrived at the crossroads of your new duty. The Guardian's pact awaits." Elias glanced around, searching for the source of the voice, but the chamber was empty, save for the orb. He stepped forward, and the voice continued, as if emanating from the orb itself. "This pact has been made many times before, Elias. Those who take the mantle of the keeper are bound by an ancient agreement, to protect the flow of knowledge, to guard the balance, and to stand against those who would misuse the power of the cosmos. But now you must make your own vow, for the guardianship is not a solitary endeavor." Elias felt his heart quicken. The weight of the responsibility was heavy, but it was the kind of weight he was ready to bear. He placed his hands on the orb, its surface cool and smooth under his fingertips, and felt a sudden surge of energy flow through him. His vision blurred, and for a moment, the universe seemed to unfold before his eyes. Its infinite stars, the galaxies spiraling outward, the intricate web of time and space that connected all things. The orb's energy was not just a conduit for power. It was a connection, a link to the guardians who had come before him, a reminder of the eternal pact that bound them all. Elias understood now that he was part of something much larger than himself, a vast, interconnected force that stretched across the fabric of existence. The voice returned, clearer this time. "Now, Elias Carter, you must speak the words of the Guardian's Pact. With your vow, you will bind yourself to the sacred duty that awaits. You will become a true keeper, a part of the eternal watch that ensures the balance of the cosmos remains intact." Elias closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The words felt like a weight but also a promise. He had made his decision, and now it was time to fulfill it. "I vow to protect the knowledge of the universe," Elias began, his voice steady, his mind clear. "I vow to stand against those who would corrupt it for their own gain. I vow to uphold the balance, to ensure that the cosmic laws remain intact, and to safeguard the harmony of all that exists. I swear to carry the mantle of the keeper, and to honor the guardians who have come before me." As the final words left his lips, the orb flared with brilliant light, and Elias felt a rush of energy flood through him. The pact was complete, and in that moment he felt the presence of the guardians around him. Not physically, but spiritually. Their collective energy, their wisdom, their resolve had passed into him, binding him to the eternal watch. The chamber fell silent. The orb's light dimmed, and the walls, now bathed in a soft golden glow, seemed to pulse with approval. Elias could feel the knowledge of the universe flowing through him, a current of ancient wisdom and power that would guide his every step. "You have done well, Elias Carter," the voice said, now a whisper in the back of his mind. "The Guardian's pact has been fulfilled, and the universe has been forever changed. But remember, your journey is just beginning. The path of the Keeper is long and fraught with challenges. There will be those who will test your resolve, who will seek to tear at the fabric of reality itself. But you are no longer alone. You carry with you the strength of the Guardians and the knowledge of the cosmos." Elias stood tall, his mind focused and unwavering. He understood the weight of his new duty, and he was prepared to face whatever came next. The universe was vast, and the threats it faced were many, but he was no longer just an explorer or a witness. He was a defender, a protector of the very fabric of reality. With the Guardian's pact complete, Elias knew his mission had only just begun. The universe was full of wonders, but it was also full of dangers, forces that would stop at nothing to disrupt the delicate balance. He was ready to face them, to uphold the vow he had made. The path ahead would be difficult, but he would walk it with the strength of the keepers who had come before him. The stars awaited, and Elias Carter, keeper of knowledge, would answer their call. The light from the orb faded, leaving the chamber bathed in a soft, golden glow that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the cosmos. Elias stood still for a moment, absorbing the significance of the pact he had just made. The weight of responsibility had settled upon him, but with it came a profound sense of peace. He was no longer the uncertain explorer, drifting through the stars. He was a keeper, bound by oath, by duty, and by the knowledge of those who had come before him. But peace was fleeting in a universe as vast and ever-changing as this one. The balance he had sworn to protect was fragile, and there were forces, hidden and powerful, that sought to disrupt it. Elias knew his path would be perilous. He could feel it in the very air around him, the subtle tension that lingered beneath the surface of the universe. As much as he had embraced his role, he had to be prepared for the shadows that would inevitably rise to challenge him. The Eons, the ancient race of cosmic beings who had entrusted him with their wisdom, had warned him of such forces. They had spoken of the dark entities, beings of ancient power who sought to unravel the fabric of reality itself. Some of them were still in hiding, waiting for the right moment to strike. Others, however, were more brazen. They moved through the universe like phantoms, leaving destruction in their wake. And then there were the corrupted ones, those who had once been keepers like Elias, but who had turned from their sacred vows and embraced the seductive allure of absolute power. They sought to reshape reality in their image, to bend the cosmos to their will, and they were dangerous. Elias knew that the threat was imminent. The forces that sought to disrupt the balance were not idle. They were watching, waiting for an opportunity to strike. He turned away from the orb and began walking toward the exit of the chamber. His mind was already racing, processing the immense amount of knowledge that had flooded into him. His connection to the Guardians, to the fabric of the universe, was still new, but he could feel it, deep within, a pulse of energy that connected him to everything. It was as if the cosmos itself had woven him into its very being. "Seraph?" Elias called out, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "Prepare the ship. We're leaving." "Understood, Captain," came Seraph's voice through his earpiece, cool and efficient. "Where are we heading?" Elias paused for a moment. The next step in his journey was unclear, but he knew one thing for certain. He had to find the source of the disturbance, the force that was threatening the delicate balance of the universe. "To the edge of the known universe," Elias replied, his voice firm. "There is something out there, something that is pulling at the fabric of reality. I don't know exactly what it is, but I need to investigate." "Understood, Seraph said again, her tone betraying no hint of surprise. She had come to trust Elias's instincts, and this time, she knew they were leading him to something dark. The ship's engines roared to life as Elias made his way to the command deck. The vast expanse of stars stretched out before him, a sea of light that seemed to reach into infinity. But in that sea, there were shadows, dark spots where the light seemed to falter, where the fabric of the universe itself seemed to twist and ripple. Elias stared out into the void. The balance was fragile, and whatever force was at the edge of the known universe was threatening to shatter it. "We are not alone," he murmured to himself. The feeling of being watched, of something lurking just beyond his perception, had returned. But now it was stronger, more insistent. He had no choice. He had to confront whatever was causing this disturbance before it consumed everything. "Set course for the edge of the known universe, Seraph. Whatever's out there is waiting for us." The ship surged forward, its engines cutting through the darkness. As Elias steeled himself for the unknown, he could feel the weight of the journey ahead pressing down on him. There was no turning back now. As they approached the outer reaches of the universe, the stars around them seemed to shift, the edges of space becoming distorted, like ripples in a pond. It was a subtle effect at first, but as they drew closer to the source of the disturbance, it became more pronounced. The very fabric of reality was bending, warping under the strain of something far more powerful than anything Elias had ever encountered. The ship's sensors began to flicker, picking up strange readings, signals that did not align with the known laws of physics. It was as if something was reaching out, distorting the universe itself. "Captain, there's something out there," Seraph said, her voice tight with unease. "I can't get a clear reading, but it's definitely not natural. It's like something is pulling on the very space around us." Elias's eyes narrowed. He could feel it too. The tug at the edge of his consciousness. The pull of something ancient, something powerful. Whatever it was waiting for them. They had reached the edge of the known universe, and before them stretched a vast darkness. A region of space where no stars burned, where no light could escape. It was as if this place had been carved from the very fabric of existence. An empty void where the rules of the universe no longer applied. "This is it," Elias muttered, staring into the infinite blackness. "Whatever's out there, it's trying to unmake everything." Seraph's voice was barely a whisper. "Captain, I'm afraid we're not alone in this void." Elias's heart skipped a beat as he turned to face the dark expanse before him. He could feel the presence again, that suffocating force, watching, waiting. The universe was no longer a place of endless possibility. It had become a battleground. The final test of his vow had come. ## Part 15. The abyss beckons the void before Elias stretched endlessly, a yawning chasm that threatened to swallow everything in its path. The stars that once twinkled so brightly had vanished, replaced by an oppressive darkness that seemed to warp the very space around them. The ship, small and fragile in comparison to the vastness of the universe, floated at the edge of this unknown realm, suspended in a place where the laws of physics no longer held sway. Elias stood at the command deck, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of the disturbance that had drawn them here. The pull was undeniable, an invisible force that seemed to magnetize them toward the abyss. It was as though something ancient, something awakened, was calling to them from the depths of the universe. Seraph's voice broke the silence, tight with anxiety. "Captain, the sensors are going haywire. We're being pulled into the rift. If we don't act fast, we'll be lost in that darkness." Elias's eyes narrowed as he looked at the readouts flashing across the console. The ship was being drawn into the heart of the void, its trajectory locked onto a path they couldn't escape. The edges of reality seemed to shimmer, as though the universe itself was cracking under the strain of whatever force was at work. "Adjust the gravity stabilizers," Elias ordered, his voice calm but edged with urgency. "We need to break free of its pull. Reroute the engines to maximum thrust." Seraph moved quickly, her fingers dancing across the controls. The ship's engines roared to life, sending a surge of power through the vessel. For a moment it felt as if they might break free, as if the pull of the void would lose its grip. But then, a deep rumble resonated through the ship, and the darkness ahead seemed to stretch even further, as though the very fabric of the universe were bending to accommodate them. "It's no use," Seraph muttered, a trace of fear creeping into her voice. "The more we fight it, the stronger it gets. Whatever is out there is manipulating space itself." Elias gritted his teeth, refusing to let fear take hold. He had made a vow to protect the balance of the cosmos, and he wouldn't let it be undone by some unknown force, no matter how powerful. He had to understand what was happening before it was too late. "Prepare to enter the rift," Elias said, his tone resolute. "We need to get close enough to study it. Maybe there's a way to reverse whatever is causing this." Seraph hesitated for a moment but nodded. "Aye, Captain. Brace for impact." The ship lurched forward as they crossed into the rift. The moment they passed the threshold, the world around them seemed to shatter. The stars, the ship, even time itself appeared to fracture into 1,000 pieces. For a brief moment, Elias felt like he was suspended in nothingness, lost in a place where the very concept of reality was broken. And then, all at once, the sensation disappeared. They had crossed over into the rift. Before them was a space unlike anything Elias had ever seen. It wasn't black like the void beyond. No, this was something different. It was an empty expanse, a vast and unsettling stillness that seemed to stretch on for eternity. There were no stars, no nebulae, no galaxies. Only an infinite emptiness that seemed to twist and fold in on itself. As Elias looked closer, he saw that the very edges of the rift were shifting. Waves of dark energy rippled outward, distorting the fabric of space itself. The ship's sensors barely registered anything, only a chaotic blur of readings, each one more incomprehensible than the last. "What is this place?" Seraph whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror. Elias didn't answer right away. He was too focused on the energy patterns flickering around them, on the sense of presence that seemed to loom over them from the farthest reaches of the rift. He could feel it, an intelligence, ancient and malevolent, watching them from the darkness. "We're not alone here," Elias said, his voice low. He knew they had crossed into a realm that was not meant for mortals, a place where the laws of the universe did not apply. It was a place of entropy, where the very concept of time and space was fluid and unstable. As they drifted deeper into the rift, Elias's mind reached out, searching for any clue, any fragment of knowledge that could help them understand what was happening. And then, through the shifting chaos, he felt it, the pull of something alive. It was ancient, older than anything he had encountered before. It was a force that had been lying dormant, waiting for the moment when the balance would be disrupted. And now that moment had arrived. "Elias!" Seraph's voice was shaky. I think we're in the presence of the unseen." The name sent a chill through Elias's spine. The unseen were ancient, powerful entities that existed beyond the known realms of space and time. They were the harbingers of destruction, beings that thrived on chaos and entropy, feeding on the breaking of the cosmic order. "What are they doing here?" Elias asked, though he already knew the answer. The unseen were no strangers to the forces of the cosmos, but their presence here, at the very edge of reality, could only mean one thing. They were awakening. The balance of the universe had been disturbed, and they had come to reclaim what had been lost. But what did they want with Elias? What had drawn them to this particular moment in time, to him and his mission? Before he could answer his own question, the ship shook violently. The rift seemed to collapse in on itself, folding into a dark spiral that pulled them deeper into the abyss. The stars outside the viewport twisted and vanished, replaced by a swirling, chaotic mass of light and shadow. "Captain, we're losing control," Seraph shouted, her hands flying across the controls in a desperate attempt to stabilize the ship. But it was no use. The gravitational forces at play were far too strong. The rift had them locked in its grip, and there was no escaping. Elias's mind raced. He had to make a decision, quickly. The universe, the balance, was in jeopardy, and the unseen were the ones who could undo it all. "Seraph, get us out of here." Whatever it takes, do it, Elias barked, his heart pounding in his chest. But Seraph's face paled. It's no use, Captain. We're too deep now. And then, as if on cue, the rift opened. A vast, alien presence stretched out before them. A being older than the universe itself, its form formless, its will indomitable. Elias stepped forward, ready to face the unseen. The presence before them was overwhelming. It wasn't something that could be understood through mere perception. It was an experience, a weight pressing down on the very essence of being. Elias felt himself drawn into its depths, his thoughts scattering in all directions, as if his mind were being pulled apart and reconstructed by an invisible hand. The air around him was thick with a palpable pressure, a suffocating sense of being watched, scrutinized, and measured. And then, from the heart of the swirling chaos, a voice spoke. It was not a voice in the traditional sense. There were no sounds, no vibrations in the air. Instead, the voice came through Elias's mind, bypassing his senses entirely. It was ancient, vast, and incredibly cold, like the depths of space itself. The words echoed in his consciousness, resonating with a terrible power. Keeper of knowledge, the voice intoned, its tone both curious and disdainful. You have trespassed into the realms that are beyond your understanding. Why do you seek to disturb the natural flow of the cosmos? Elias's breath caught in his throat. He had prepared himself for many challenges on his journey, but facing the unseen, beings that existed beyond the boundaries of time and space, was a whole different level of terror. He fought the urge to cower under its weight, instead focusing on his purpose. He had made a vow and he would fulfill it. I seek to restore the balance, Elias replied, his voice steady despite the maelstrom of thoughts crashing through his mind. The cosmic order has been disturbed, and I will not stand idly by while the universe unravels. The voice seemed to pause, as if contemplating his words. The vast, swirling mass of energy before him shuddered, and the sensation of being watched grew more intense. Balance, the voice echoed, as though the concept was foreign. Balance is an illusion, a fleeting dream. The universe is chaos, entropy, and decay. It is the only true state of existence. You, Keeper, are deluded to believe that there is any other path. Your meddling only delays the inevitable. Elias felt a cold shiver run through him. The entity before him was not just ancient. It was a force that embodied destruction. The unseen were the harbingers of chaos, the catalysts of entropic decay. And yet, Elias could not allow himself to be swayed by their words. His mission was clear, and his conviction was unyielding. I do not believe in chaos for the sake of chaos, Elias said firmly. There is a greater purpose to the universe than endless destruction. There is creation, order, and the possibility of growth. I will fight for that. The void around him seemed to flinch, as though the very fabric of reality was recoiling from his words. A ripple of energy passed through the rift, distorting the space around them. The voice of the unseen returned, this time filled with amusement. Foolishness. You speak of growth and creation as if they are not also bound to the cycle of destruction. You cannot escape it. You are a part of this inevitable process, Keeper. The very laws of existence will break you, just as they have broken all others before you. The entity's words hit like a thunderclap. Elias felt the weight of their truth in his bones. The universe had always been in a state of flux, where creation and destruction were two sides of the same coin. But still, he refused to believe that this was all there was. He had witnessed the beauty of the cosmos, the endless possibilities for life and growth. He had seen civilizations rise, thrive, and create art, knowledge, progress. To allow the unseen to unravel it all would be to condemn everything to an endless, meaningless spiral of entropy. You may be powerful, Elias said, his voice unwavering, but I will not allow you to erase all that is good in the universe. I will protect it, even if it means standing against you. The voice seemed to scoff, a soundless echo that sent a wave of cold through Elias's very being. You are but one mortal, it said. Your resolve is insignificant in the face of what is to come. You cannot stop the tide of entropy. It will devour you, as it has devoured all who came before you. The universe will return to the void from which it came. There is no escape. There is no salvation. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his thoughts. He had faced countless challenges before, but this was something different. The unseen were not mere threats to be confronted. They were the embodiment of a force beyond comprehension. And yet, Elias could not afford to give in to despair. His vow was clear, and he could not allow the forces of destruction to claim the cosmos. He opened his eyes and locked his gaze onto the void before him. "I will not let you win," Elias said, his voice now filled with conviction. "I am not alone in this. I carry the strength of the keepers who came before me, and I will fight to protect the balance." There was a long, pregnant silence. The rift before him seemed to deepen, the swirling chaos intensifying as the unseen considered his words. Finally, the voice spoke again, this time with a hint of malice. "So be it, Keeper," it intoned. "You have chosen your path. But know this, the price of defying us will be great. Your resolve will be tested in ways you cannot imagine. And when the time comes, when you face the true cost of your actions, you will understand that the universe is not a place of harmony. It is a battlefield." The void seemed to ripple, and the presence of the unseen faded slightly, as though withdrawing into the depths. Elias stood tall, his mind racing. He could feel the weight of their threat, the immense power that stood against him. But he also felt something else, an undeniable determination. The universe was not a battlefield of destruction and entropy. It was a place of infinite potential, where creation and progress could thrive. And he would fight to protect it. With a deep breath, Elias turned toward Seraph, who was watching him with wide eyes. The ship's systems were still unstable, and the rift continued to warp reality around them. But Elias knew one thing for certain: they couldn't stay here. They had to escape the rift and figure out how to stop the unseen once and for all. "Seraph, we need to get out of here," Elias said, his voice resolute. "Prepare the engines for an emergency jump. We're not finished yet." Seraph nodded, her hands moving swiftly over the controls. The engines hummed to life, and the ship began to pull away from the rift. The dark expanse of the unseen receded, but Elias could feel the looming presence of the entity at the back of his mind. The battle was far from over. But as the ship shot back toward the known universe, Elias couldn't help but feel that, for the first time, the true nature of his journey had become clear. He was not just a keeper of knowledge anymore. He was a protector of all that had been created, a defender against the forces that sought to unravel it all. The war between creation and destruction had begun. The stars had always been a guiding light for explorers, for those daring enough to venture beyond the confines of their home worlds. They represented the unknown, the mysteries that lay beyond the horizon, beckoning those with the courage to seek them out. But now, as Elias and his crew raced away from the rift, he saw the stars in a new light. They were not just distant beacons of hope. They were reminders of the fragility of the universe, of the endless battle between creation and entropy. As the ship tore through space, Elias stood at the helm, his hands clenched around the controls. Seraph worked beside him, her eyes scanning the shifting readings as they moved farther from the rift. The ship's engines hummed steadily, but the air inside the cockpit felt thick with the weight of the journey they had just undertaken. The ship had narrowly escaped the grasp of the unseen, but Elias knew that their relief was only temporary. The unseen would not let them go so easily. The war had only just begun. "We've made it, Captain," Seraph said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "We're out of the rift. For now, at least." Elias nodded, but the weight on his chest remained heavy. He had faced the unseen, but he had not defeated them. The cosmos had been thrown out of balance, and it was only a matter of time before the forces of chaos returned to finish what they had started. "We can't stop here," Elias said, his voice firm. "We need to figure out how to fight back. The unseen are powerful, but they're not invincible. There has to be a way to tip the scales in our favor. Asterisk Seraph met his gaze, her eyes filled with both determination and concern. Asterisk, but how, Captain? The unseen are older than time itself. They've seen civilizations rise and fall, witnessed the birth and death of stars. What makes you think we can stop them? Asterisk Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. He didn't have all the answers, but one thing was certain. He would not give up. He had seen the potential of the universe, the beauty that lay in its endless possibilities. The unseen, with their obsession with entropy and decay, sought to destroy that potential. But as long as there was life, as long as there were those who still believed in the future, there was hope. I believe in the strength of the cosmos, Elias said quietly, his voice carrying a weight of unspoken conviction. I believe that if we stand together, if we don't let fear consume us, we can find a way to restore balance. We can rebuild what has been torn apart. Seraph nodded, though there was still a hint of doubt in her expression. Then what's our next move? Elias turned toward the star charts, his mind already racing with possibilities. They needed allies, others who understood the forces at play, those who could help them navigate the tumultuous battle ahead. The unseen were powerful, yes, but there were others out there, other beings and civilizations who had faced their own battles against entropy. Perhaps they could learn from them, forge alliances that would strengthen their cause. We head to the Gaius cluster, Elias said, his voice decisive. It's a haven for those who have fought against the forces of entropy for millennia. If anyone knows how to deal with the unseen, it's them. Seraph's eyes narrowed with recognition. The Gaius cluster was a network of ancient, secretive civilizations, scattered across the farthest reaches of the galaxy. They were known for their advanced knowledge of cosmic forces and their unyielding resistance against the destructive powers that threatened the universe. Elias had heard whispers of them, but no one knew much about their inner workings. It was said that they held the key to understanding the very fabric of reality itself. It's a long journey, Seraph cautioned. We'll need supplies, and the farther we go into uncharted space, the more danger we face. The unseen may be watching, waiting for us to slip up. Elias didn't flinch. He had faced countless dangers in his life, but this was different. This was a war for the very soul of the cosmos. There was no turning back now. We're ready for whatever comes, Elias replied. Prepare the crew for a jump to the Gaius cluster. Set course. As Seraph turned to set the course, Elias glanced out the viewport, staring at the distant stars. The vastness of space stretched out before them, both beautiful and terrifying. There were so many unknowns, so many dangers lurking in the darkness. But there was also hope, the hope that they could restore balance, that they could defend the cosmos from the forces that sought to tear it apart. The ship powered up, and with a final surge of energy, they jumped into the depths of the galaxy. The stars blurred into streaks of light as they plunged deeper into uncharted space, heading toward the Gaius cluster. In the silence that followed, Elias closed his eyes and silently repeated his vow: to protect the balance, to fight for the future, no matter the cost. The unseen, with their obsession with entropy and decay, sought to destroy that potential. But as long as there was life, as long as there were those who still believed in the future, there was hope. I believe in the strength of the cosmos, Elias said quietly, his voice carrying a weight of unspoken conviction. I believe that if we stand together, if we don't let fear consume us, we can find a way to restore balance. We can rebuild what has been torn apart. Seraph nodded, though there was still a hint of doubt in her expression. Then what's our next move? Elias turned toward the star charts, his mind already racing with possibilities. They needed allies, others who understood the forces at play, those who could help them navigate the tumultuous battle ahead. The unseen were powerful, yes, but there were others out there, other beings and civilizations who had faced their own battles against entropy. Perhaps they could learn from them, forge alliances that would strengthen their cause. We head to the Gaius cluster, Elias said, his voice decisive. It's a haven for those who have fought against the forces of entropy for millennia. If anyone knows how to deal with the unseen, it's them. Seraph's eyes narrowed with recognition. The Gaius cluster was a network of ancient, secretive civilizations scattered across the farthest reaches of the galaxy. They were known for their advanced knowledge of cosmic forces and their unyielding resistance against the destructive powers that threatened the universe. Elias had heard whispers of them, but no one knew much about their inner workings. It was said that they held the key to understanding the very fabric of reality itself. "It's a long journey," Seraph cautioned. "We'll need supplies, and the farther we go into uncharted space, the more danger we face. The unseen may be watching, waiting for us to slip up." Elias didn't flinch. He had faced countless dangers in his life, but this was different. This was a war for the very soul of the cosmos. There was no turning back now. "We're ready for whatever comes," Elias replied. "Prepare the crew for a jump to the Gaius cluster. Set course." As Seraph turned to set the course, Elias glanced out the viewport, staring at the distant stars. The vastness of space stretched out before them, both beautiful and terrifying. There were so many unknowns, so many dangers lurking in the darkness. But there was also hope, the hope that they could restore balance, that they could defend the cosmos from the forces that sought to tear it apart. The ship powered up, and with a final surge of energy, they jumped into the depths of the galaxy. The stars blurred into streaks of light as they plunged deeper into uncharted space, heading toward the Gaius cluster. In the silence that followed, Elias closed his eyes and silently repeated his vow: to protect the balance, to fight for the future, no matter the cost. The journey to the Gaius cluster was long and perilous, but the crew of the Peregrine was resilient. As the ship cut through the vastness of space, Elias found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The encounters, the sacrifices, the choices that had led them to this pivotal moment. And yet, despite all they had faced, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The unseen were out there, waiting, their presence an ever-present shadow lurking in the depths of the void. Seraph, too, seemed lost in thought. She spent most of her time at the navigation console, her fingers flying over the controls as she worked to keep them on course. But every so often, Elias would catch a glimpse of her pensive expression, as if the weight of their mission was beginning to settle in her bones. "You seem troubled," Elias said one evening as he approached Seraph on the bridge. Seraph glanced up from the console, her eyes betraying a quiet exhaustion. "I'm just thinking about everything, Captain. The unseen, the rift. It's all too much sometimes. How can we fight something that exists outside of time? How can we fight something so ancient and powerful?" Elias leaned against the console, his eyes scanning the vast expanse of space beyond the viewport. The stars stretched out before them, an endless sea of light and possibility. And yet, beneath that beauty, he could feel the tension of the universe, the constant pull between creation and decay. "We fight because we have to," Elias said after a long pause. "We fight because if we don't, the universe will fall into chaos. The unseen represent the inevitable end of all things, but I refuse to believe that destruction is the final answer. There's too much at stake. Too many lives. Too many possibilities." Seraph nodded, her expression softening. "I know. I just wish there were more we could do." Elias understood her frustration. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, but it was also fragile. There were moments when everything seemed to hinge on a single decision, a single choice. And in those moments, the weight of responsibility felt almost unbearable. "We will find a way," Elias said with quiet resolve. The Gaius cluster holds the answers we need. They've faced the unseen before. They know how to fight back. Seraph looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. "I trust you, Captain." Elias gave her a brief smile before turning back to the viewport. In the distance, a faint cluster of stars began to emerge, smaller at first, but growing brighter with each passing second. They were nearing their destination. The Gaius cluster was a place of myth and mystery. Few had ever returned from its depths, and even fewer had ventured into its heart. It was a region of space untouched by the chaos that plagued the rest of the galaxy. Legends told of ancient civilizations, long lost to time, that had once inhabited the cluster. It was said that the Gaius cluster was a haven for those who sought refuge from the forces of entropy, a place where knowledge and wisdom flourished untouched by the ravages of time. As the peregrine approached the outer reaches of the cluster, Elias could feel a strange energy building in the air, a hum of something otherworldly that resonated deep within him. It was as if the very fabric of space was woven differently here, as if time itself bent in ways they couldn't yet understand. "This is it," Seraph said, her voice filled with awe. "We're entering the cluster. The energy readings are off the charts. It's unlike anything I've ever seen." Elias nodded, his eyes fixed on the dense cluster of stars ahead. The Gaius cluster was not a typical region of space. It was a collection of tightly knit, interconnected star systems, each one with its own unique gravitational pull, orbiting around an ancient, hidden force. It was a shield against the darkness, a place where the forces of entropy couldn't reach. As they entered the heart of the cluster, the ship's systems began to stabilize, the strange fluctuations in the sensors slowly receding. The pressure that had been building inside Elias's chest since they left the rift began to lessen. It was as if the very aura of the Gaius cluster was providing them with a sense of calm, a welcome respite from the chaos that had followed them since their encounter with the unseen. But Elias knew better than to think they were safe. They had only just arrived, and the real challenge was still ahead. "Set course for the central hub," Elias ordered. "We need to meet with the Council of the Gaius cluster. They are our best hope." Seraph nodded and adjusted the controls. The ship veered toward the central cluster, where a large ancient station hung suspended in space, a massive construct that looked as though it had been there for eons. The station's surface was covered in intricate symbols and markings, glowing faintly in the dim light of the surrounding stars. Elias couldn't help but marvel at the craftsmanship of it, at the sheer magnitude of the civilization that had built it. As the peregrine approached the docking bay, Elias felt a surge of anticipation. They were on the verge of discovering something crucial, something that could change the course of their battle against the unseen. The docking bay doors slid open, revealing a sleek, metallic surface. As they landed, Elias could see figures waiting for them. Tall, humanoid beings with shimmering, silver-like skin and piercing eyes that seemed to glow with an inner light. They radiated an aura of intelligence and power, their presence a stark contrast to the darkness of the universe they had just fled. One of the beings stepped forward, extending a hand toward Elias. "Welcome, Keeper," they said in a voice that seemed to resonate deep within Elias's bones. "We have been expecting you." Elias took the being's hand, his mind racing with questions. But before he could speak, the being continued. "The unseen have stirred once more. You are not the first to seek our guidance, but you may be the one who has the strength to change the tide. Come. The council awaits. Part 19. The Council of Gaius. The atmosphere in the council chamber was unlike anything Elias had ever experienced. The air itself seemed to hum with an unseen energy, vibrating with the weight of centuries of accumulated knowledge and wisdom. The beings who inhabited the Gaius cluster, those who had gathered to meet Elias, were no ordinary people. They were ancient, their forms exuding an intelligence that transcended the limitations of human understanding. They had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth and death of stars, and the unyielding march of entropy itself. Elias and Seraph were escorted into a grand hall, its walls adorned with intricate symbols and patterns that seemed to shift and change as they moved. The floor was made of a smooth, translucent material that gleamed with a soft light from an unknown source. At the far end of the chamber, a large, circular table stood surrounded by towering figures, each one radiating a sense of profound authority. Elias could feel their eyes upon him as he approached, their gazes heavy with the weight of ancient knowledge. These beings, the Council of the Gaius cluster, were not just experts in the cosmos. They were its guardians, entrusted with protecting the delicate balance between creation and entropy. They were the last line of defense against the forces of destruction that threatened to undo all that had been built. As Elias and Seraph reached the table, one of the figures, the one who had greeted them earlier, spoke. Asterisk, Keeper of Knowledge, you have come at a time of great danger. The unseen are more than mere entities of destruction. They are the embodiment of the cosmic balance, the force that drives the inevitable decay of all things. Asterisk, Elias stood tall, his resolve unwavering. I know what they are, he replied. Asterisk, I've seen their power, felt their presence. But I refuse to believe that entropy is the only end. There must be a way to fight back, to restore balance without succumbing to their will. Asterisk. The figure before him nodded slowly, as if considering his words. Your conviction is strong, Keeper. But you must understand that the unseen are not merely a force of destruction. They are the very counterpart to creation itself. Without them, there can be no new life. Without destruction, there can be no growth. The universe is in a constant dance between these two forces, and one cannot exist without the other. Elias's mind raced as he processed the figure's words. He had always known that creation and destruction were intertwined, but he had never considered the possibility that they were part of a cosmic cycle, one that could not be broken. Could it be that the unseen were not the true enemy? Were they simply a necessary part of the universe's natural order? But that doesn't mean we have to surrender to them, Elias said firmly. There must be a way to maintain balance without allowing them to erase all that has been created. I've seen civilizations, species, and entire worlds thrive. I've seen the beauty of life, of growth, of progress. I refuse to let the unseen destroy it all. The figure's eyes gleamed with a deep understanding, as if it had seen the conflict play out countless times before. You are not wrong, Keeper. The cycle of creation and destruction is indeed a delicate one, but it is also an essential one. To challenge the unseen is to challenge the very fabric of reality itself. But there is a way forward. A way to tip the balance, if only for a moment. Elias leaned forward, his heart pounding in his chest. What do you mean? The figure raised its hand, and the symbols on the walls of the chamber seemed to glow brighter, shifting and reshaping themselves into a map of the galaxy. The stars aligned, forming constellations that Elias recognized, and yet some were unfamiliar to him. The map shimmered, as if alive with energy, as if it were speaking to him. There are places in the galaxy, the figure said, where the forces of creation and destruction are more concentrated than anywhere else. These places are nexus points, where the balance between the two forces is at its most fragile. If you can find and control these points, you may be able to shift the balance, if only for a time. Elias's mind spun as he looked at the map. These nexus points could hold the key to defeating the unseen, to restoring the balance without succumbing to their will. But how could he possibly find them? The galaxy was vast, and the unseen were elusive, operating outside the normal flow of time and space. Where are these nexus points? Elias asked, his voice urgent. How do we find them? The figure's gaze softened, and it motioned to another member of the council. This being, unlike the others, had eyes that glowed with an eerie, ethereal light. It spoke, its voice carrying the weight of ages. We have seen the unseen's patterns, the being said. Their presence is not random. It follows certain signatures, certain patterns that can be traced through the fabric of space. But it is dangerous. The unseen will be aware of your attempts to track them, and they will stop at nothing to keep you from interfering. Elias's heart quickened. They had a chance, but the stakes were higher than ever before. The unseen would not simply let them go after these nexus points. There would be no easy path forward. How do we navigate these patterns? Elias asked, his voice steady despite the growing sense of urgency. How can we use this knowledge to our advantage? The figure with the glowing eyes nodded, its gaze unwavering. You must seek the chronomancers. They are the keepers of time, the guardians of the ancient knowledge that can guide you. They are scattered across the galaxy, hidden from most, but they are the key to finding the nexus points and understanding the patterns of the unseen. Elias felt a flicker of hope. The chronomancers, a long-lost order of beings who had mastered the manipulation of time. If anyone had the power to help them navigate the shifting currents of the cosmos, it was them. "Where can we find them?" Elias asked, his mind already turning with plans. The glowing-eyed figure extended a hand toward the map, and a series of coordinates appeared, highlighting specific systems deep within uncharted space. "Follow these coordinates," the figure said. "The chronomancers will find you if you prove yourself worthy. But be warned, the unseen will not let you reach them easily. Time is your greatest ally, and yet it is also your greatest enemy." Elias nodded, his resolve hardening. They had a plan, a way forward, but the road would be fraught with danger, and the unseen would be watching every step of the way. He turned to Seraph, who had been silently absorbing the conversation. "Prepare the ship," he said. "We're going after the chronomancers." As the council members began to fade back into the shadows, Elias could feel the weight of their words settle in his heart. The battle was far from over, and the path ahead would test everything they had. But he was ready. The forces of entropy might be ancient, but they were not invincible. Together, they would fight for the future. The Peregrine drifted through the uncharted space, following the coordinates given to them by the Council of the Gaius Cluster. The vastness of the galaxy stretched out around them, a swirling sea of stars and nebulae, each one hiding secrets waiting to be uncovered. But the path they followed now was different. It wasn't just a physical journey. It was a journey through time itself. Elias sat at the helm, his mind racing with the enormity of their mission. They were about to confront the chronomancers, the enigmatic beings who had mastered the forces of time. They were the ones who could unlock the secrets of the unseen, who could guide them toward the nexus points that held the key to restoring balance in the universe. But even as Elias steeled himself for what lay ahead, a gnawing doubt lingered in his mind. The chronomancers were no ordinary beings. They had lived for centuries, perhaps millennia, existing outside the normal flow of time. They were keepers of the most ancient knowledge, and their powers were unimaginable. Could he and his crew truly stand against them? Could they even trust them? "Captain," Seraph's voice broke through his thoughts, "we're approaching the coordinates. There's a massive energy reading ahead. It's unlike anything I've ever seen." Elias turned to the view screen, his heart quickening. In the distance, a swirling vortex of light and energy appeared, its edges shimmering with a strange, almost otherworldly glow. The vortex seemed to pulse with life, shifting and changing as though it were alive. It was a rift in the fabric of space and time, a doorway to something beyond their comprehension. "This is it," Elias said, his voice low. "We're entering the heart of time." Seraph nodded, her fingers flying over the controls as she adjusted their course. The ship veered toward the rift, and as they drew closer, Elias could feel the very fabric of the universe bending around them. Time itself seemed to warp and stretch, as though they were passing through a veil that separated the known from the unknown. The ship's systems began to flicker, warning lights flashing across the console. "Captain, we're losing stability," Seraph said urgently. "The gravitational pull of this rift is stronger than anything I've ever encountered. We need to stabilize the ship, or we'll be pulled in." Elias's mind raced. They couldn't afford to lose control now, not when they were so close. "Divert all power to the stabilizers," he ordered. "We're not turning back now." With a sudden surge of energy, the ship's engines roared to life, stabilizing them just enough to prevent the rift from swallowing them whole. The tension in the air was palpable as they approached the heart of the vortex. It was as though the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for them to cross the threshold. As they entered the rift, the stars around them seemed to warp and distort. Time bent in impossible ways, moments stretching and compressing as they passed through. Elias could feel his own consciousness flickering, as though the very nature of existence was being rewritten with every passing second. The ship groaned under the strain, and the crew braced themselves for the unknown. Finally, the vortex began to dissipate, and before them lay an ancient temple, floating in the void. It was a structure unlike anything Elias had ever seen. Its architecture was both alien and familiar, a blend of organic curves and geometric precision. The walls seemed to pulse with a soft, internal light, and the air was thick with an aura of quiet power. "Welcome, Keeper," a voice echoed through the chamber, its tone both familiar and strange. Elias's heart skipped a beat. The voice was not coming from any single source. It was as if it were emanating from the very fabric of time itself, resonating deep within his bones. Elias and Seraph stepped forward, their eyes scanning the temple. The doors before them slowly opened, revealing a vast, empty hall. At the far end of the hall stood a figure, tall and shrouded in a flowing robe that shimmered with the colors of the galaxy itself. The figure's face was hidden in shadow, but there was no mistaking the presence of the chronomancer. "You have come seeking the secrets of time," the figure said, its voice soft yet commanding. "But time is not a thing to be controlled or manipulated lightly. It is both a gift and a curse, a force that flows through all things, from the smallest atom to the largest star. To alter time is to risk unraveling the very fabric of reality." Elias stepped forward, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "We seek not to control time, but to understand it. The unseen are a force of destruction, but they are also a part of the cosmic cycle. We need to find a way to restore balance without succumbing to their will." The chronomancer's gaze seemed to pierce through Elias, as though it were reading his very soul. "You speak of balance, Keeper, but balance is an illusion. Time does not seek balance, it seeks flow. The unseen are but one expression of this flow, a necessary counterpoint to creation. The cycle must continue, for without decay, there can be no renewal." Elias felt a surge of frustration. "Then what do you propose? Should we simply accept the destruction they bring? Should we allow them to erase everything we've worked for, everything that has ever been created?" The chronomancer was silent for a long moment, its form shimmering as if it were shifting through the very fabric of time. Finally, it spoke. "There is a path, Keeper, a path that can lead to the nexus points where the flow of time can be redirected. But this path is fraught with danger. The unseen will not let you walk it unchallenged. Time is not something to be bent at will. It is a force that must be respected." Elias's mind raced. The nexus points were their only hope, but they would not be easy to reach. The unseen would stop at nothing to keep them from interfering. And the chronomancers, their true intentions were still unclear. "How do we begin?" Elias asked, his voice filled with determination. The chronomancer extended its hand, and the walls of the temple seemed to ripple like water. A map appeared before them, a map of the galaxy, but it was unlike any map Elias had ever seen. The stars and systems were connected by glowing lines, paths that shifted and changed with each passing second. "Follow the path," the chronomancer said. "The nexus points are hidden within the flow of time itself. You must find them before the unseen do, or all will be lost." Elias and Seraph exchanged a glance, their resolve hardening. They had come this far. Now they would face the greatest challenge yet. As they turned to leave, the chronomancer's voice echoed once more. "Remember, Keeper, time is both your greatest ally and your greatest enemy. Use it wisely, or it will be your undoing." The temple doors closed behind them, and Elias felt the weight of the chronomancer's words pressing down on him. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The battle for the universe had only just begun. The train hummed gently as it pulled into Stillwater Station, a small town nestled between rolling hills and a quiet, shimmering lake. James Wilder stepped off with a deep sigh, rolling his single suitcase behind him. The evening sky was painted in soft hues of pink and lavender, and a cool breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh water. Stillwater wasn't just a place on a map. It was a promise of peace, of simplicity, of something that felt like home, even though James had never set foot here before. A soft chime rang from the clock tower in the town square, marking 6 o'clock. The handful of people at the station greeted each other with nods, smiles, and slow, deliberate movements that hinted at a life unbothered by the rush of the outside world. James exhaled, letting the weight of the past years slide off his shoulders like an old coat. He had spent too many years chasing something. Success, recognition, meaning, but somewhere along the way he had lost sight of what truly mattered. That's why he was here now in Stillwater, ready to start again. An elderly man in a newsboy cap approached him. "You must be James." James nodded. "That's me. I'm Henry," the man said, extending a hand. "I run the general store. Folks here told me you were coming. You'll be staying at the Willow House, right?" "Yes, I rented it for a few months." Henry smiled. "Good choice. It's got the best view of the lake. Come on, I'll give you a ride." As James followed Henry to an old, blue pickup truck, he felt something shift inside him. Maybe, just maybe, this was the place where he could finally slow down and breathe. The old pickup truck rumbled down a quiet road lined with towering willow trees, their long branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. James sat in the passenger seat, watching as Stillwater unfolded before him. Quaint cottages with white picket fences, a bakery with a chalkboard sign listing the day's specials, and a tiny bookshop with a cat curled up in the window. All of it felt like something out of a dream. "You'll like it here," Henry said, his eyes fixed on the road. "Life moves slower, but that's not a bad thing. Gives you time to listen." James glanced at him. "Listen to what?" Henry chuckled. "You'll see." After a few minutes, they turned down a narrow gravel path leading toward the lake. And there it was, the Willow House. It was a charming wooden cottage with faded blue shutters, nestled between two ancient willow trees. The front porch wrapped around the house, and a wooden swing hung from one of the beams. The best part, though, was the view. The lake stretched out before them, still and glassy, reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. A few ripples danced across the surface, and in the distance, James could see a small wooden dock. Henry parked the truck and stepped out. "Keys are under the flower pot," he said, nodding toward the porch. "Got some groceries in the fridge for you, too. Figured you wouldn't want to run to town right away." James felt a warmth in his chest. "That's really kind of you. I appreciate it." Henry waved a hand. "That's Stillwater for you. We take care of each other." James stepped onto the porch, picked up the key, and unlocked the door. The inside smelled like cedar and old books. A stone fireplace sat in the center of the living room, and a cozy armchair faced a window overlooking the lake. As he set his suitcase down, a deep sense of peace settled over him. Maybe, for the first time in years, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. James ran his fingers over the smooth wooden counter in the small but welcoming kitchen. The soft ticking of an old wall clock filled the space, blending with the faint rustling of leaves outside. He opened the fridge, finding fresh bread, butter, eggs, and a pitcher of what looked like homemade lemonade. He smiled to himself. Henry really had thought of everything. After making a simple sandwich, James carried his plate and a glass of lemonade out onto the porch. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of damp earth and pine. Crickets chirped in a steady rhythm, and the lake shimmered under the moonlight like a pool of liquid silver. Something about this place was different. The silence wasn't empty. It was full, alive, whispering stories only patient hearts could hear. James leaned back in the porch chair, sipping his drink. It had been a long time since he had just sat like this, without a phone buzzing, emails waiting, or deadlines looming. Somewhere in the distance, a loon let out a haunting, melodic call. James closed his eyes, letting the sound sink into him. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about tomorrow. He wasn't replaying the past. He was simply here, wrapped in the arms of the night, listening to the quiet song of Stillwater. A gentle breeze stirred the wind chimes hanging by the door, their soft notes blending with the rustling willows. The lake lapped at the shore, whispering in a language older than time. James breathed deeply, feeling the tension in his body dissolve. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now, this moment was enough. And for the first time in a long, long time, he slept soundly. James woke to the soft glow of morning light filtering through the curtains. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of dew and pine. For a moment, he simply lay there, listening. No blaring alarms, no honking traffic, just the gentle lapping of the lake and the occasional chirp of a waking bird. He stretched and sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Something about the air in Stillwater felt different. Cleaner, lighter, like it carried none of the burdens of the world beyond this quiet town. Curious to see the lake in the morning, he grabbed a sweater, slipped into a pair of worn sneakers, and stepped onto the porch. The world was wrapped in mist, soft and dreamy. The lake barely visible beyond the shifting silver fog. The willow branches dripped with tiny beads of moisture, swaying gently in the early breeze. Drawn by the stillness, James walked down the narrow dirt path toward the dock. His footsteps were muffled by the damp earth, and as he reached the wooden planks, he inhaled deeply, letting the crisp air fill his lungs. The dock creaked softly beneath his weight. He sat down, dangling his legs over the edge, his feet inches above the water. As he watched, the mist slowly began to lift, revealing more of the lake's glassy surface. It was like the world was waking up in slow motion, taking its time unhurried. James smiled to himself. Maybe that's what he needed to do too, wake up slowly, let go of the rush and simply be. The thought settled in his chest, warm and reassuring. Somewhere in the trees, a bird began to sing, its melody carrying over the water. And for the first time in years, James listened. As James sat on the dock, watching the mist lift, the faint sound of water rippling caught his attention. He turned his head and saw a small wooden rowboat gliding across the lake. An older man sat in it, his strokes slow and steady, barely disturbing the water. His silver hair peeked out from beneath a well-worn cap, and his plaid flannel shirt looked like it had seen many years of Stillwater mornings. James watched as the man guided the boat toward the dock, his movements calm, practiced. As he neared, he lifted his oars and let the boat drift the last few feet. "Morning," the man called, his voice rich and deep. "Morning," James replied, nodding in greeting. The man tied his boat to one of the wooden posts before stepping onto the dock with the ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times. He patted his cap and smiled. "Haven't seen you around before." "Just moved in yesterday," James said. "Staying at the Willow House for a few months." The man nodded approvingly. "Good place. Belonged to the Turners before they moved down south. It's got a way of making people stay longer than they plan." He extended a weathered hand. "Name's Walter." "James." They shook hands, and James felt the strength in Walter's grip. A lifetime of rowing, chopping wood, and working with his hands. Walter leaned against the dock's railing, gazing out over the water. "You a city man?" "Used to be," James admitted. "Needed a change." Walter chuckled. "Stillwater has a way of giving people what they need. You just have to listen to it." James raised an eyebrow. "That's the second time someone's told me to listen since I got here." Walter smiled knowingly. "Then you're already on the right path." James wasn't quite sure what he meant, but something told him he'd find out soon enough. James spent the rest of the morning walking through town, taking in the slow, unhurried rhythm of Stillwater. It was a place where time didn't rush. It meandered, like the ripples on the lake. The general store stood at the heart of town, its wooden sign swinging gently in the breeze. Inside, shelves were lined with jars of homemade preserves, fresh produce, and small trinkets that looked like they had stories of their own. Henry stood behind the counter, chatting with an older woman who held a basket of vegetables. When he spotted James, he gave a warm smile. "Ah, the newcomer. Sleep well?" "Better than I have in years," James admitted. "Good, good. Stillwater has a way of doing that." Henry leaned forward, lowering his voice slightly. "People come here thinking they just need a break. But this place, it changes you." James smiled, not quite sure what to make of that yet. "Walter said something similar this morning." Henry chuckled. "Walter's been here longer than anyone. If he says to listen, you do well to pay attention." James glanced out the window, where the lake shimmered under the midday sun. "What exactly am I supposed to be listening for?" Henry's eyes twinkled. "That's for you to figure out." Before James could respond, the shop door jingled, and a woman walked in carrying a tray of fresh-baked bread. "Morning, Henry," she called, setting the tray on the counter. Then she turned to James, offering a bright smile. "You must be the one renting the Willow House." "That's me," James said, returning the smile. She wiped her hands on her apron and extended one. "I'm Margaret. I run the bakery next door. If you ever need a warm loaf or a good cup of coffee, stop by." James shook her hand. "I just might take you up on that." Stillwater was beginning to feel less like a temporary escape and more like a place he belonged. James followed Margaret out of the general store and into the small bakery next door. The moment he stepped inside, the scent of warm cinnamon and fresh dough wrapped around him like a comforting embrace. The space was cozy, with wooden shelves lined with pastries, jars of honey, and handwritten labels on every loaf. Margaret walked behind the counter and grabbed a round loaf from the tray she had just delivered to Henry's shop. "This one's on the house," she said, placing it in a paper bag and handing it to James. "You don't have to do that," he said, surprised by the generosity. She waved a hand. "It's tradition. First-timers in Stillwater get a loaf of my sourdough. Helps them settle in." James smiled, touched by the small-town kindness. "Then I won't argue." Margaret leaned on the counter, watching him with curiosity. "So, what brought you here?" James hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "Honestly, I'm not sure yet. Just needed a change." She nodded knowingly. That's how it starts for most folks. They come looking for a break and end up finding something they didn't know they'd lost. James glanced out the window at the lake, its surface rippling under the afternoon sun. "You've lived here long?" "All my life." Margaret's smile turned fond. "Stillwater's the kind of place that gets into your bones. It's quiet, sure, but there's a rhythm to it. One that most people don't notice at first." James thought of Walter's words that morning about listening. He wasn't sure what they all meant yet, but a part of him was beginning to understand. Margaret tapped the counter. "You should take that loaf down to the dock. Have it with some butter while you watch the sunset. Best way to end the day." James took the bag and nodded. "I think I'll do just that." As he stepped out of the bakery and back into the slow-moving world of Stillwater, he felt something shift inside him, like he was no longer just passing through, but becoming part of the story. James walked back to the Willow House with the paper bag tucked under his arm. The late afternoon air was warm but carried a crispness that hinted at the coming evening. Birds called lazily from the trees, their songs blending with the rustling leaves and the occasional splash of a fish breaking the lake's surface. He stepped onto the porch, setting the bread down on the wooden table before grabbing a small dish of butter from the fridge. Then, with a knife in hand, he made his way down to the dock, the planks cool beneath his feet as he settled into the same spot he had sat that morning. The lake stretched before him like a vast mirror, reflecting the golds and pinks of the setting sun. He sliced a piece of the bread and spread a thin layer of butter, watching as it melted into the warm crust. Taking a bite, he let the simple flavors settle on his tongue. Tangy, rich, comforting. For the first time in a long time, he ate slowly. Not in front of a screen, not between meetings, not in a rush. Just him, the bread, and the lake. As the sun dipped lower, the water turned a deep shade of amber. A gentle breeze rolled across the surface, making the reeds along the shore sway. James exhaled, feeling something deep within him loosen, something that had been wound tight for years. He thought about the life he had left behind, the constant deadlines, the relentless pursuit of something he couldn't quite name. And now, here he was, watching the sky change color over a still lake, feeling full not just from the bread, but from the moment itself. Maybe Margaret and Walter were right. Maybe Stillwater wasn't just a place, it was a way of being. A loon called from the far side of the lake, its sound haunting and beautiful. James leaned back on his elbows, watching as the last sliver of sun disappeared behind the hills. And for the second night in a row, he felt at peace. As the last golden light of the sun faded beyond the hills, James noticed something unusual. A soft glow dancing on the surface of the lake. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, but as his eyes adjusted, he realized they were lanterns. Dozens of small, Floating lanterns drifted across the water, their flickering flames casting warm reflections against the rippling surface. James sat up, mesmerized. He hadn't noticed anyone setting them afloat, and there was something almost otherworldly about how they moved, as if the lake itself was guiding them. The distant sound of a paddle dipping into the water broke the silence, and James turned to see Walter's rowboat gliding across the lake once again. This time, a small wooden crate sat beside him, and as he rowed, he gently placed another lantern onto the surface. James called out, "Walter!" The old man looked up, then gave a small nod before guiding his boat toward the dock. As he neared, James could see the warm glow of the lanterns reflecting in Walter's eyes, making them look even wiser, even older. "You're just in time," Walter said as he secured his boat. He reached into the crate and pulled out a lantern, handing it to James. "Go on. Make a wish." James took the lantern, feeling the smooth wood and delicate paper in his hands. The tiny candle inside flickered, its warmth almost imperceptible against the cool evening air. "A wish?" he asked, studying Walter's face. Walter gave a knowing smile. "It's an old Stillwater tradition. Once a month we set lanterns on the lake. Some say it carries wishes, others say it carries worries away. Either way, the lake listens." James glanced at the glowing lights drifting further out, then back at the lantern in his hands. He wasn't sure what to wish for. He had spent so long chasing goals and dreams that now, sitting here in the stillness, he wasn't sure what he truly wanted. After a moment, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then, with careful hands, he placed the lantern onto the water and watched as it floated away, joining the others in their slow, luminous dance. Walter smiled. "Good choice." James looked at him. "I didn't say anything." Walter tapped his temple. "Didn't have to." The two men sat in companionable silence, watching the lanterns drift across the lake. And for the first time in years, James felt like he wasn't chasing anything. He was exactly where he was meant to be. The lanterns drifted further out, their golden glow reflecting off the glassy surface of the lake. James watched them, mesmerized by their slow, steady movement. The night was calm, and for the first time in what felt like forever, his mind wasn't racing. Walter leaned back against the dock's railing, stretching his legs out. "Stillwater's got a way of holding on to things," he said, his voice low and thoughtful. "Memories, moments, even people. Some come here just passing through, but the lake, well, it has a way of knowing who belongs." James turned to him. "And how does it know?" Walter chuckled. "Same way you know when a place feels right. It's not something you can explain. It's something you feel." He nodded toward the lanterns. "Those aren't just lights on the water. Every person who's ever lived in Stillwater has sent one out at some point. Wishes, worries, dreams. Whatever they need to let go of." James looked back at the floating lanterns. He had never believed in things like this before. He had spent years relying on logic, on schedules and structured plans. And yet, here in Stillwater, he was beginning to understand that not everything in life had to be measured or controlled. Walter sighed, stretching his arms. "Used to be a man who lived here long ago," said the lake spoke to him. Not with words, but in the way the wind changed, the ripples moved. Folks thought he was just an old storyteller, but I think there was some truth in what he said. James raised an eyebrow. "You think the lake is alive?" Walter smiled. "I think places hold memories just like people do. And if you listen closely, they'll tell you their stories." James thought about that as they sat in silence, watching the lanterns disappear into the distance. He had come to Stillwater to escape the noise of his old life, but maybe, just maybe, he had come here to listen to something deeper. And for the first time, he was ready to hear it. The night deepened around them, and the temperature began to dip, the coolness of the evening settling over the land like a blanket. The lanterns, now distant, dotted the lake like tiny stars fallen from the sky. James sat there in the quiet, trying to absorb Walter's words. Stillwater was more than just a place. It was a living entity, steeped in history and mystery. He wondered how long it had taken people like Walter to truly listen to the land, the water, and the wind. The silence around them was unlike any James had ever experienced. It wasn't empty, nor was it uncomfortable. It was full of life, an orchestra of crickets, rustling leaves, and distant hoots of owls in the trees. It was the kind of silence that spoke volumes. Walter seemed at ease in it. He wasn't waiting for something to fill the air. He was just being. James envied that. He realized that for years he had been chasing sound, chasing distractions, anything to avoid the stillness that now felt oddly comforting. "You know," Walter said after a while, breaking the silence, "I wasn't always like this." James turned to him, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Walter smiled, his eyes crinkling at the edges. "I used to be just like you. Always on the move, always thinking. Got a lot of noise inside your head, don't you?" James nodded, surprised by how easily Walter had read him. "Yeah, I guess I do. It's hard to turn it off sometimes." Walter chuckled softly. "Took me years to learn how. But you can't find peace by running from everything. You have to sit with it. Let the silence in. Let it wash over you." James mulled over his words. Sit with it. It was something so simple and yet so profound. He had been so focused on fixing things, on moving forward, that he had forgotten the power of simply being. Walter leaned back on the dock again, eyes on the stars above. "You'll find what you're looking for, James. But you won't find it in the noise. You'll find it in the silence." James looked up at the sky. The stars twinkled brightly, their light so clear and pure that it seemed impossible they had been there for centuries. He could hear the water lapping gently against the dock and the soft rustling of the trees. And in that moment, he felt something stir deep inside him. A quiet knowing that had always been there, waiting for him to hear it. As the night wore on, the temperature dropped further, and the air turned crisp. The stars above shone brighter now, scattered across the sky like diamonds set against the black velvet expanse. The world felt infinite, and yet somehow James felt smaller, insignificant in the most peaceful way. Walter's words echoed in his mind. You can't find peace by running from everything. You have to sit with it. James let himself soak in the night, the quiet, the space between the thoughts that usually crowded his mind. For the first time, he didn't feel the urge to fill the silence with words, questions, or plans. There was nothing to solve, no destination to reach, just the here and now. The sound of the water was steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The occasional splash of a fish jumping broke the stillness, and in the distance, the howl of a distant coyote reached his ears. It was wild, untamed, and yet somehow comforting, as if the world had been this way long before James had arrived and would continue in its quiet rhythm long after he was gone. You know, people say the lake's got secrets, Walter murmured, breaking the silence between them once again. His voice was low, almost reverent. James turned to him. What kind of secrets? Walter leaned forward, eyes narrowing as if he were peering into a distant past. It's not the kind of place that tells you everything right away. The lake doesn't give up its stories easily. But if you stay long enough, it'll share what it knows. James raised an eyebrow. What do you mean by that? Walter shook his head slowly, as if weighing whether to share something deep. Well, I've been here for a lot of years, and I've seen things, odd things. Things that don't make sense at first, but, in the end, feel like they've always been part of the story. He paused, staring at the water. People come to Stillwater looking for answers, and sometimes they leave with more questions than they arrived with. James felt a chill run down his spine. There was something about Walter's tone that made him believe there was truth to what he was saying. The lake, the town. It wasn't just a picturesque place to relax and forget the world. There was something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface. Walter took a long breath, his gaze still fixed on the water. But that's the beauty of it. You don't need to know everything. You don't need the answers. Sometimes, just being here, listening, is enough. James stared at the shimmering lake, feeling its pull, as if it was silently inviting him to uncover its mysteries. He wasn't sure what those secrets were, but in that moment, he understood that he didn't need to know. The lake would share them when it was ready, and until then he could simply listen and let the quiet embrace him. James woke early the next morning, the sun already peeking over the horizon, casting soft golden light through the curtains of his bedroom. He lay there for a few moments, just taking in the peacefulness that surrounded him, the quiet of the house, the stillness of the morning. There were no sirens, no traffic, no rush. The world outside was untouched, as though still water itself was in a timeless state, always on pause. James felt as though he could just remain there, still with the world moving around him but not demanding his participation. But then the thought of the lake crossed his mind, and he couldn't resist. He quickly dressed and stepped out onto the porch, feeling the cool morning air on his skin. The scent of fresh pine and damp earth filled his lungs as he made his way toward the dock. The lake was calm, the water as smooth as glass, reflecting the early light. It was almost eerie how still everything was, how serene it felt. James stood at the edge of the dock for a while, just watching. No ripples, no sounds except the occasional call of a bird. The world was silent, waiting. After a few moments, he sat down, pulling his knees to his chest and gazing out over the water. It was as if the lake was holding its breath, as if the whole town was in a suspended state, frozen in time. He thought back to the stories Walter had shared the night before. The lake had its secrets, sure, but what did they mean for him? Was he just another person passing through, or was there something more here for him to discover? He closed his eyes, leaning back on the dock. The warmth of the sun began to settle on his skin, and he allowed the quiet to wash over him. There was something about still water that made him feel small in the best way. It was humbling, a reminder that the world was bigger than his own thoughts, his own struggles. As he sat there, it occurred to him that maybe the peace he had been searching for didn't come from answers at all. Maybe it came from being present, from letting go of the need to always understand, to always solve. He didn't know what Stillwater's secrets were, but for now, he was content to listen. As the morning progressed, James found himself drawn to the rhythm of Stillwater. The town itself seemed to wake slowly, almost deliberately, as if in harmony with the lake. People went about their day with a sense of ease, nothing rushed, nothing demanding attention. It was a far cry from the chaotic pace of his old life. After a light breakfast at the Willow House, James wandered into town, the bread from Margaret's bakery still warm in his bag. The streets were empty, save for a few townsfolk who nodded as they passed. There was no need for pleasantries or hurried exchanges. As he walked out of the store with the thermos in hand, he felt the weight of her words sink in. It wasn't just about being present, it was about listening with intention. The lake, the town, the people. It wasn't all a coincidence. There was a pattern, a rhythm that connected everything, if you were willing to pay attention. James felt that connection beginning to form, like the first thread of a story that had been waiting for him to uncover. He wasn't just visiting Stillwater anymore, he was becoming part of it, slowly but surely. He made his way back to the dock, the thermos tucked under his arm, and sat down on the edge. The mist that Henry had spoken of was rolling in, just as he had predicted. It curled over the lake like a soft, ethereal blanket, hiding the distant shore from view. James took a deep breath, letting the cool, damp air fill his lungs. The quiet was so complete, so all-encompassing, that it felt as though the whole world had been distilled into this one moment, this one place. And for the first time in a long time, he felt a deep sense of peace. James sat on the dock for what felt like hours, watching the mist swirl around the water, soft and almost otherworldly. He had taken the first sip from the thermos Margaret had given him, and the warmth of the coffee spread through him, grounding him in the cool morning. The taste was rich, earthy, with a hint of something sweet, like it had been brewed with care. The mist on the water created a veil of mystery, hiding the distant shore. The occasional ripple from a fish breaking the surface was the only sound, other than the wind that whispered through the trees. There was something about the wind here. It wasn't just a passing breeze, but a constant companion, always moving, always speaking in soft sighs and gentle caresses. James closed his eyes and listened. It wasn't as if the wind was saying words. No, it was more like it was sharing a feeling, a sense of peace that seemed to resonate in the very air itself. It was a comfort, like a lullaby from nature, gentle and unhurried, the kind of thing you could only truly hear if you allowed yourself to be still enough. A soft rustle of leaves behind him pulled him from his thoughts. James turned to find Walter standing at the edge of the dock, a quiet smile on his face. The old man had an air of knowing about him, as if he was simply passing through time rather than being affected by it. "Thought I'd find you out here," Walter said, his voice low but warm. James gestured to the mist. "It's incredible, isn't it? The way the lake just—" He trailed off, unsure how to explain it. Walter nodded. "The lake has a way of holding you in its embrace. It makes you forget time, makes you forget everything else. It's been that way for generations." James looked at the water again, watching the way the mist seemed to dance and shift with the movement of the wind. "I feel like there's something here, something I can't quite put into words." Walter chuckled softly, as if he'd heard the same sentiment from others many times before. "That's the thing about still water. It doesn't give you answers. It gives you space to find your own." The words settled in James's chest, a reminder that sometimes the answers weren't as important as the journey itself. It wasn't about figuring everything out. It was about letting go of the need to know and allowing life to unfold in its own time. For the first time, James realized that the peace he had been searching for wasn't something to be found outside himself. It was something he had to learn how to embrace, something that could only be understood through stillness and patience. Walter sat down beside him on the dock, his presence quiet but steady. The two of them sat in silence for a while, the only sound the soft lapping of the water against the wooden posts. "I used to think that the lake was full of answers," Walter said after a long while, his voice thoughtful, "that it held all the secrets of the world. But now, I think it's more about what it teaches you when you stop looking for answers." James considered that, nodding slowly. "So the lake doesn't give answers. It gives perspective." Walter smiled. "Exactly. It's not about having all the right questions. It's about being open to whatever comes next." James looked back at the water, letting the wind wash over him. For the first time, he wasn't worried about where he was headed or what he still had to figure out. He was here in the moment, and that was enough. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the mist began to recede, slowly dissipating into the air like a dream fading at dawn. The warmth of the day spread across the lake, casting a shimmering glow on the surface of the water. The dock felt peaceful, bathed in soft light, and the world seemed to slow down, as if it was in no hurry to move forward. James sat with Walter in companionable silence for a while, both of them watching the lake. The world beyond Stillwater seemed like a distant memory now, as if it belonged to another lifetime. All that mattered was the stillness of this place, the way the air felt against his skin, the soft rustling of the leaves, and the quiet presence of the water. He realized in that moment that he had been running for so long, running from his past, from his responsibilities, from his own need for answers. He had spent years trying to fit pieces of a puzzle that never quite seemed to make sense. But here, in Stillwater, the pieces didn't need to fit. There was no puzzle to solve, no timeline to follow. There was only the present moment, and it was enough. Walter broke the silence first, his voice calm and measured. "You've come a long way, James. Not just from where you were, but from who you were." James looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" Walter smiled, the lines of age deepening around his eyes. "You've been holding on to things, whether you realized it or not. Worries, regrets, fears. You came here looking for peace, but you didn't know how to let go of what you were carrying. But now you're starting to understand." James took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Walter's words. He had spent so much of his life focused on the next step, the next goal, the next destination. And yet, every time he thought he had found peace, it was fleeting, gone as soon as he moved forward again. "Do you ever let go of everything?" James asked quietly, his gaze fixed on the lake. "Do you ever feel completely at peace?" Walter nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Not all the time, but there are moments like this one when everything falls away. When the only thing that matters is where you are and who you're with. James let that sink in. He had come to Stillwater seeking a place to escape, but what he had found was something far more profound, a lesson in being, not doing. The peace he had been searching for wasn't something he could chase down. It was something he had to allow into his life, piece by piece. The silence that followed was rich with understanding, and for a long time, neither of them spoke. James simply sat there, feeling the weight of the world gently lifting off his shoulders. He didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid. The stillness of the lake had worked its magic, quieting his racing thoughts and filling him with a sense of calm he had never known before. And in that calm, he began to realize that the most important thing wasn't the journey ahead. It was the one he was on right now. As the sun continued to climb in the sky, the light grew warmer, and the sounds of the town began to stir in the distance. But James remained on the dock, grounded in the moment, content in his own stillness. The days in Stillwater flowed together seamlessly, each one a continuation of the last, like the gentle roll of waves on a quiet lake. James spent his mornings on the dock, letting the silence of the water fill him with a sense of clarity, and his afternoons exploring the town, learning its quiet rhythms. Every corner seemed to have a story to tell, every weathered building a memory etched into its walls. The town, like the lake, held its secrets, and James was beginning to understand that some of those secrets didn't need to be uncovered. They simply needed to be appreciated. On one of his afternoon walks, James found himself in front of an old, abandoned barn at the edge of town. He had passed it a few times before but had never stopped to take a closer look. The barn stood tall, though its paint had long since faded and its wood had started to warp under years of exposure to the elements. There was something hauntingly beautiful about it, the way it seemed to speak of forgotten histories, of lives once lived. Curious, James approached the barn. The door was slightly ajar, and as he pushed it open, the creak of the old wood was a familiar sound, one that seemed to echo in the quiet air. Inside, the barn was empty except for a few scattered hay bales and remnants of what had once been a thriving space. Dust motes danced lazily in the sunlight that filtered through the gaps in the wood. James wandered through the barn, his footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust on the floor. He felt as though he were stepping into a different time, a time when this barn had been full of life and purpose. Now it was just a skeleton of what it once was, its past tucked away in the silence that surrounded it. He ran his hand along the rough wood of a beam, feeling the texture beneath his fingers. There was something grounding about it, something that made him realize how much time had passed since he'd allowed himself to simply be. How much of his own life had been spent moving forward without ever truly stopping to appreciate the journey. As he stood in the barn, a memory from his past surfaced. It was a moment of childhood, a time when he had been content, when life had seemed simpler. He had spent hours playing with his friends in an old shed, much like this barn, filled with the kind of wonder only a child could feel. James smiled softly at the memory. Maybe this barn wasn't just a place of history. It was a reminder that life, like the barn, wasn't just about building and growing. It was also about pausing to appreciate what had come before. When he left the barn, he closed the door gently behind him, as if to preserve the quiet sanctity of the space. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the town. James took a deep breath, the evening air cool and fresh. As he walked back toward the center of town, he realized that Stillwater was showing him something he had never fully understood before. It wasn't just the absence of noise or the peacefulness of the surroundings. It was about honoring the past, both his own and the town's, while still moving forward. Stillwater wasn't just a place of escape. It was a place of reflection, where time didn't rush, and where the past and the future were allowed to coexist in balance. James couldn't help but think that, in some way, Stillwater had been waiting for him, waiting to show him that life wasn't always about answers, but about understanding the space between them. As the days drifted by, James found himself embracing Stillwater in ways he hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just the quiet mornings by the lake or the slow pace of the town. It was the subtle way in which Stillwater invited him to let go, to be present, and to accept that not everything needed to be figured out. But, as with all places that hold deep truths, Stillwater wasn't without its moments of mystery. There were whispers among the townsfolk about the changing seasons. How, as the cold months approached, the town's energy seemed to shift. People spoke less, walked slower, and the mornings felt colder, the evenings longer. It was as if the town was bracing itself for something, though no one ever mentioned what that something might be. One evening, as James walked through the town after a quiet dinner at the Willow House, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. The air felt denser, as if it was holding its breath. The usual sounds of the night, the crickets, the distant rustling of leaves, seemed muted. There was only the stillness, thick and heavy. He passed by the old church, the one at the edge of town that looked as though it had been there forever. The lights inside were dim, and the windows were fogged, as if the church itself was lost in thought. James hesitated for a moment, unsure of what drew him closer. The building seemed to call to him, the silence inviting him in. Curiosity won out, and he pushed open the creaking door. The inside was cool, dimly lit by flickering candles along the pews. The scent of old wood and incense lingered in the air. James moved deeper into the church, the echoes of his footsteps quieted by the thick stone walls. There was a feeling in the air here, something different than what he had experienced at the lake or in the barn. It was a sense of history, of reverence, but also of mystery. It felt as though the church was holding something, a secret of sorts, something that had been passed down through the generations. James couldn't quite place it, but the weight of it pressed on his chest. He sat down in one of the pews, allowing the stillness to envelop him. The quiet was profound, as if the church itself was waiting for him to acknowledge its presence. The soft flicker of candlelight seemed to dance across the stone, casting fleeting shadows on the walls. For a moment he simply sat there, feeling the pull of something ancient, something timeless. A sound, soft but deliberate, broke the silence. James turned his head to see an elderly woman standing in the back of the church, watching him with calm, knowing eyes. Her white hair was pulled back into a loose bun, and her face was lined with the marks of age and wisdom. She wore a simple dress, and in her hands, she held a small, worn book. "I wondered when you would come," the woman said, her voice like the sound of wind through leaves. "The lake does that, you know. It calls to people when they need to be reminded of things they've forgotten." James didn't know what to say. He was taken aback by her sudden appearance, by her knowing tone. It was as if she had been waiting for him, as if this encounter had been set in motion long before he had ever arrived in Stillwater. "The lake calls," James repeated, his voice quiet. The woman nodded slowly. "It calls because it knows. It knows the answers you're seeking, and it knows the questions you're too afraid to ask." She stepped forward and sat beside him, her presence calming. "But not everyone is ready for what it offers. Not everyone can hear its whisper." James felt the weight of her words, but he didn't understand. "What do you mean? What does the lake want from me?" She smiled softly, her eyes distant. "It doesn't want anything, dear. It only offers. You have to decide whether or not you're ready to receive." There was a long silence, and James could feel the pull of something deep within him, something that was almost within reach, but not quite. He looked out at the church, at the flickering candles, and he realized something profound. The journey he had begun wasn't just about finding peace. It was about uncovering the layers of himself he had buried. Stillwater and the lake weren't just teaching him how to listen to the world around him. They were teaching him how to listen to the quiet places within himself. The woman stood and moved toward the door. "The lake will wait for you," she said, her voice like a soft breeze. "But the question is, will you wait for it?" With that, she disappeared into the darkness, leaving James alone with his thoughts. James left the church with a sense of unease settling over him. The woman's words echoed in his mind, and though he didn't fully understand them, they stirred something deep within him. A feeling that perhaps there was more to Stillwater, and to himself, than he had yet realized. The town, now bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight, felt different that night. The shadows seemed longer, more stretched out, as if the darkness itself had more to say. James walked slowly, his mind tangled with the strange encounter. He couldn't shake the feeling that the lake, the church, and the woman had all been pieces of a puzzle he wasn't sure he was ready to solve. He returned to the lake's edge, where the water stretched out before him like a mirror, reflecting the pale moon above. The mist had returned, curling around the shoreline, veiling everything in a soft, ethereal light. It was as if the lake itself was alive, its surface shifting gently, whispering secrets only those who listened closely could hear. James stood there for a long time, watching the ripples form and fade into the stillness. He felt as though the lake was calling to him, but not with words, more like a feeling, a pull that resonated deep within him. He heard a sound, soft at first, like the rustling of leaves or the distant hum of a breeze. But it wasn't the wind. It was a voice, faint but clear. It was the same whisper he had felt before, back when the woman had spoken in the church. Only now it was louder, stronger, as if the lake itself was speaking directly to him. "Let go," the voice said. "Let go of what you've been holding on to." James's heart raced, and his breath caught in his throat. He felt the weight of the words sink deep into his chest. Let go. Let go of what? Of his past? Of his regrets? Of the fear that had been following him for so long? For the first time, James realized that the peace he had been seeking wasn't something that could be found in the stillness of the world around him. It wasn't something that could be given to him. It was something he had to find within himself. He had to let go of the stories he had told himself, the burdens he had carried for so long. Only then would he be free to truly embrace the present. The wind picked up again, and the water stirred, the mist swirling in the air like a living thing. James stood there for a long time, contemplating the voice he had heard, letting the silence settle over him like a heavy cloak. The town, the lake, the people, they weren't the answer. They were simply a mirror, reflecting back the parts of himself that he had yet to confront. And for the first time he felt ready. Ready to face what he had been running from. Ready to shed the weight of his past and step into the unknown. The lake wasn't just calling him to listen, it was calling him to become. As he turned to leave, the moonlight caught the edge of the water, casting a soft glow across the surface. James paused for a moment, taking one last look at the lake. The mist had begun to settle, the ripples fading into calm once more. And in that moment, James knew that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was one he was ready to take. The next morning, James woke to a gentle light spilling through the windows of the cottage. The sky was clear, the air crisp, and there was a serenity in the world outside that felt like the beginning of something new. Stillwater was waking up slowly, just as he was, stretching into the day with a quiet grace that matched the peacefulness of the town itself. The whispers of the night before had faded, but the feeling they left behind lingered. A quiet assurance that everything had changed, even if he couldn't quite explain how. As he made his way to the lake, James reflected on the time he had spent here. He hadn't expected to find answers, but Stillwater had offered him something far more valuable: perspective. The town had given him space to pause, to breathe, and most importantly, to listen. It had revealed to him the importance of surrender, of letting go, and of allowing the stillness to guide him. And, in a way, it had reminded him of the person he used to be, the person before the rush of life and the endless quest for success had taken over. He reached the dock and stood there for a while, letting the cool air wash over him. The lake, still as a mirror, reflected the sky above, and James saw in its surface a reminder of the journey he had undertaken. The lake didn't need to explain itself. It simply existed, calm and still, offering its peace to anyone who was willing to accept it. As he sat down on the edge of the dock, he thought about the people he had met in Stillwater, especially Margaret and Walter. They had given him glimpses of something he hadn't even known he was searching for. They had shown him that peace wasn't a destination, but a practice, a daily choice to be present, to let go of the burdens of the past, and to embrace whatever came next. Walter's words echoed in his mind once more. It's not about having all the right questions. It's about being open to whatever comes next. Those words had resonated with him in ways he hadn't fully understood until now. He had been so focused on finding answers, so consumed by the need to understand everything, that he had missed the point entirely. Stillwater hadn't given him the answers he thought he needed. It had simply shown him that sometimes there is beauty in the unknown, in the space between the questions. James felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over him, grateful for the time he had spent here, for the lessons he had learned, and for the stillness that had allowed him to hear his own heart again. He wasn't the same person who had arrived in Stillwater all those weeks ago. The man who had walked into this town was searching for peace, for escape, but the man who stood here now understood that peace wasn't something that could be found in the absence of everything else. It was found in the presence of what truly mattered. As the sun began to rise higher, James stood up, his feet steady on the dock. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while he wasn't afraid of it. The lake, the town, the people, they had shown him that life wasn't something to fear. It was something to embrace, to flow with, like the gentle ripples on the water. With a final glance at the lake, James turned and walked back toward the town. The morning was unfolding, and he was ready to meet it, no longer searching for answers but simply open to whatever came next. And so, as the town of Stillwater continued its quiet rhythm, James knew that he had arrived, not just in the town, but within himself. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time he was walking it with peace in his heart.